flag out. Touchdown signal.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
End around to Neighbors. Has a crease. Malik Neighbors down the sideline. Stays in bounds with a cutback. House call. Another LSU touchdown.
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
Millen, ball comes loose, and it's going to be an incomplete pass. No, it's not whistle dead. It's still alive. Turner is going to waltz into the end zone for a touchdown.
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
Texas brings pressure. Duggan backpedals, lobs to the end zone, wide open. Johnston, touchdown.
Have you subscribed to our YouTube channel? Search 365 Sports on YouTube. Brought to you by TFNB, your bank for life.
Pokey Wilson in motion. It's Benson. Benson, his second touchdown tonight. 15 yards for Trey Benson.
Now here's David Smoak and Craig Smoak.
And here we go on this Thursday afternoon, June the 22nd. NBA draft is tonight. Baylor fans focused in on what Keontae George or Adam Flagler, where they go. George expected to be a first-round pick, and Adam Flagler, last one we showed you, the mock by ESPN was at 58, which is the last pick of the second and only of the two rounds. So that is tonight. College Baseball World Series, LSU last night beat Wake Forest, jumped on them early. They play again tonight against Wake Forest, and the winner will get Florida in a three-game best-of-three series coming up this weekend. So there's that. Couple of notes, NBA draft, and then also the College Baseball World Series. The Big 12 today. Craig Smoak with me, David Smoak, Craig Smoak, David Smoak. Participation in that Rucker Park program that was announced by the Big 12 a few weeks back. Big 12 Hoops in the Park. The men's basketball coaches that will be involved include Scott Drew, Mark Pope of Brigham Young, Wes Miller, Cincinnati, Jerome Tang, K-State, Mike Boynton at Oklahoma State, and TCU's Jamie Dixon. The women's coaches, Amber Whitting from Brigham Young, Katrina Merriweather, Cincinnati, Ron Huey of Houston, Jeff Mitty of Kansas State, and then Krista Gerlich of Texas Tech. So those will be the coaches, and they'll have this, what again is just something new, marketing the Big 12 in a market that otherwise probably wouldn't know too much about them, although the basketball success and some in football. So, Craig, we now know, in fact, it's pretty interesting, Scott Drew and Jerome Tang, two lifetime friends, will be a part of that competition and also that event.
Sure, they'll have a lot of fun. They'll bring a lot of positive energy and put a lot of smiles on kids' faces. I'm sure the rest of that crew will as well. Don't know nearly as much about most of them. But, yeah, I mean, Jamie Dixon's a great coach. All the people you mentioned, are pretty good at what they do. Mike Boynton, I know you're a fan of his. And, especially with Drew and Tang, I mean, I just know no matter who else is with them that they're going to have a good time and they're going to, make it a positive experience for the youth in New York City who come out to take part in drills and hang out and learn some basketball, skills and drills and have some fun, all that stuff. It's a, unique idea. It's not something that's going to, make millions of dollars right away or is going to, evolve into, some big tournament or anything like that necessarily. It's just it's a way to spread your wings and fly a little bit outside of your normal comfort zone and region. And, with going coast to coast, I think the more you can kind of spread the word and the brand of the Big 12, it can't hurt. That's for sure. So interested to see how this goes and the participation, but pretty good group of coaches.
The partners of this event, Big 12 Hoops in the Park, Hard Rock Hotels, Gatorade, and Whoop, which, of course, they're going to have fitness programs. They'll have drills. They'll have clinics, coaches with a Q&A with the young boys and girls who will be there. Big 12 Hoops in the Park. Also DJs and food trucks and a lot more. Kind of a nice event And those are the names of the coaches who will represent the Big 12. Texas earlier today, they love Arizona. And they've done really well in Arizona. And today they received a commitment from a 4-star running back out of Arizona. Tashard Choice, of course, the running backs coach, former Cowboys running back. They go to Phoenix to get Christian Clark, a 4-star running back. Alabama, Georgia, Oregon, and Florida State also were in the mix. And it just seems like, and it's not just Bijan, but they've done really, really well in the state of Arizona. And there is Christian Clark, the running back, who has committed to the University of Texas.
Well, they've, as you said, had a lot of success already in Arizona with what Bijan was able to do for them these last couple of years. I know they've had others along the way as well, but I mean Bijan really I think has opened a big lane for them in Arizona. So not surprising to see somebody at the same position see what he did, and also just be attracted to what Texas has to offer. I think that national recruiting has always been a thing, and for them amongst many others. But, I do wonder with the whole SEC thing and just kind of the shifting tides of now being able to just basically call bagmen, collectives and just go out there and kind of freely do it. I think that the whole national reach of programs is probably going to be, more than ever before, in terms of there's more of a group at the top, there's just kind of more advantages now to be able to, if you're a Texas and Oklahoma, whoever, to spread your wings maybe more than you did before. Like Texas didn't recruit nationally. I just think there might be more of it now moving forward because of NIL and just the exposure piece of it and things like that. So, they've been doing that. They'll continue to do that. But I do think that's going to be something interesting to watch as far as the shifting kind of tides in recruiting as the rest of college football starts to shift in some ways. But, yeah, a good player, and they're putting together, slowly but surely a pretty good recruiting class and have had a big, recent run like Tech has and others have as well. So should be a busy summer.
By the way, we don't always announce everybody that commits because otherwise that's all we would spend time doing. But we do try to touch in on some of them. We, of course, even yesterday discussed a couple of days ago, Micah Hudson from Lake Belton, and he had canceled the trip to visit Texas this weekend. Had visited them late last week and then Lubbock. So that's one right now that has a lot of people. And in fact, Sam Kahn wrote an article about what that would mean to Tech, not only being involved, but if they could pull that off, what it would mean to the program. He'll join us at 4 today. Charles Power, On3.com recruiting director. He will join us today at 3:30. He was at the Elite 11 camp. He couldn't join us earlier this week because of travel, but he'll join us today at 3:30. And Mike Craven, senior writer for Dave Campbell's Texas Football Magazine, on college football in the state of Texas. He'll join us today at 5:10. Max Olson would normally be with us on Thursdays, but he's not available today. But Max wrote an article about revisiting the class of 2019 team recruiting rankings. Now, what you see on the screen is where they have each school ranked after they've had the full cycle run its course. Then, in parentheses, is where they were ranked before that. As far as, for example, Georgia was the second-ranked recruiting class in 2019. Now, because of what's occurred the last 4 or 5 years, they're number one. But this is an interesting list. So look at Ohio State. Interesting because rarely would you ever think that they would be 14th in any kind of team rankings, but they were. And then they are 2 now when you revisit how players developed and what they did in their time in college. Michigan from 8 to 3rd, Alabama from 1 to 4, Clemson from 10 to 5. Now look at the next 5. Look at the differences in the next 5. Penn State 12 to 6, A&M dropped 4 to 7, North Carolina State 32nd back in 2019. They're now 8th. Pittsburgh was 84th.
It's 54th.
54th, excuse me. They're now 9th. And then 22nd was Ole Miss, and they're now at number 10. Now, we'll get to this in a minute, but there's one more list of those who really jumped from big-time numbers. For example, Utah had the 43rd ranked class, 12th. Oregon State, look where they were. 53rd, they're 13th. UTSA was 95th. We know what Jeff Traylor, he knows talent. He recognizes talent. He recognizes diamonds in the rough. 14th. Illinois in the 50s to 17. Fresno State in the 85th number. back 2019. Based on what now has occurred, they would be the 20th ranked class in 2019. I always enjoy these, probably more so than where a team might be ranked when the classes are released or signing day December and also in February.
Yeah, that's it's cool to say. It's hard to kind of digest all that information that quickly, but I think I said the other day it'd be interesting to kind of see if there was more of an emphasis put on how classes actually panned out versus all of the excitement and all of the things that we celebrate at the time. Like A&M celebrated this massive recruiting class, number 1 2 years ago. You saw S talking all over social media about the class they put together, what's coming, all this, and then that thing fizzled out in less than a year's time. At least a good portion of it did. So it's just kind of funny that it's like the recruiting thing, like so much is placed on the hype, and then you celebrate the gets, but then like, do they actually end up stars? Do they actually end up panning out in the long run? A lot of times, no, but it doesn't matter because you got what you wanted out of the hype to begin with. And so, yeah, it's great to see that, some schools are, recognized, at least minor, in this article as having done far better than they were probably given credit for at the time, or for having the eye to bring in the talent that eventually could blossom and end up way better than, experts apparently thought that they would be. So, I think that's a testament to those coaching staffs and development and just eye for talent. And, obviously there's another side of that. There's schools that are way worse than they originally were, but, kudos to those who were like 95th and ended up, with a borderline top 25 class.
Yep.
I mean, that's incredibly impressive. It's been when you look back at that, there's been a lot of things that have happened since then with COVID and all those types of things. So there probably should be like a little bit of an asterisk just because there were a lot of things out of your control for some of these classes, probably. NIL, the transfer portal, all came into play. So I'm sure that wreaked havoc on some of these numbers. But I do like being able to look back because if you're going to brag all year about a recruiting class you got, or, talk all that noise on signing day, it's not a bad thing to go and revisit and see like what actually that turned out to be and what the facts actually were when all was said and done. So, yeah, kudos to UTSA and others that were, obviously far better than we thought at the time.
Utah, we've seen what they've done, and 43rd, and they're not going to be a top 10 class. I don't know their highest class. I could be wrong, but the fact that they are where they are based on looking back at who was produced, who developed, and who went on to do this or that from All-American to whatever, that's pretty impressive. All right, now, Garrett, let's go to the Mike Craven graphic. This is, we spend so much time on what might happen with realignment, and we will have a note or two on that here in just a second. But he's going to join us at just after 5 after Off the Radar. He threw this up on his Twitter page earlier today just to give us an idea if you haven't seen this, and it's refreshing to me to look at games. Now, again, there's other games. There's the week 1, but in week 2, these games will be played involving colleges out of Texas. You have Oregon in that game with Texas Tech and Shuck, the quarterback at Tech, against his former team. You have Utah at Baylor. Utah back-to-back Pac-12 champions. Baylor, right now, you kind of get a feel of who they are. We don't know. Maybe you do. We will know after week 2. And then Texas at Alabama, the return trip last year in Austin when Alabama had to come out of that with, puckered up, but they took care of business. A&M at Miami, and 2 programs that need a bounce back. And then there's that Texas State game with G.J. Kinney there, and UTSA with Jeff Traylor, as quarterback back again with Frank Harris and others. Those are 5. I love them. I love those games. That's just involving schools. Of course, they're playing schools outside of Texas. Just to give you a little bit of, let's talk about games, even though it's several weeks away.
Yeah, it's good to see, and I'm very much looking forward to it. I think like everybody else, it's been a fun off season. We've had plenty of things to keep us busy, and, the realignment piece still remains out there, at least for the next few weeks. There is at least a ticking clock, it appears, on that, because eventually we are going to turn our entire focus, and we being everybody, to everybody that's, actually college football fans. We're actually going to turn our attention to college football, and, there will be some probably remnants of realignment, but, yeah, I'm not going to be worried about the Big Ten's, plans a decade from now when that schedule's popping up and actually in front of us. I am very interested, obviously, in what happens here in this Pac-12, situation that we've been talking about for so long. But I am more looking forward to, honestly, after all the time spent on it, watching their superb class of quarterbacks actually going out there and, possibly making some noise nationally like you expect them to, from Michael Penix to Cam Rising to Bo Nix to Caleb Williams, etc. So, yeah, I mean, to see that lineup and know that that's just a small sample size of what's to come nationally is a lot of fun to think about. And, in the state of Texas, it'll be a memorable Saturday and probably in multiple ways. I mean, those are some big games, and those are going to be games and results that matter a lot to those programs.
There's been a lot of discussion about Colorado, and I don't know if anybody has more meetings than they do. I know that that's been something that a lot of people have kept up with, whether they ever make the decision, what they do to stay in the Pac-12, or if they actually are truly flirting more than just kind of glancing with the Big 12. A lot of that will depend on what the Pac-12 does with their TV deal. But one thing that I have been told, and this is from someone that knows some people, and this isn't me just throwing out a source that it would not, like just some random person. That late last week they were supposed to meet, and they eventually just maybe a week or two ago. But there was somebody that was a part of the room that was involved in the meeting that kind of wanted to be heard, and it kind of like threw the meeting not off the rails. It did not take anything away. It basically delayed any more discussion about what Colorado would do, or possibly if they were thinking about literally leaving the Pac-12, which is obviously an option. Now, another week has gone by, and yet also another week without anything yet Pac-12, which, again, thrilled whenever that number, information, or whatever comes out so everybody can kind of know where they're going to live. But now what happened is, so you have the one person a week or two ago that was like, hey, I need to be heard here. And he kind of raised his voice in a way that he wanted to be the one that wanted to set something straight. Everybody heard him. There was a thought that okay, that's enough. Now we can move on. Let's listen to you or her, or he or her. Now there are others in that same room. They want to be heard. And so that's, people get what's going on with them. One, it's part of business. They got a hell of a decision to make. If they stay, fine. If they leave, fine. But there's just kind of been a little bit of a not uprising, not disagreements, but more just maybe some egos that want their back scratched a little bit and make sure they're on record when it comes to what the future is at the University of Colorado. So that could have been what has kind of delayed even more of anything. They might vote about what's going on and might vote never even bring up the Big 12. Never bring up anything other than we've heard that everybody has their grant of rights set. We've heard that from the Pac-12. We've heard that from the reports by various national writers. But Colorado, if anybody's right there on the ledge, it's them. But there are some people that want their backs scratched. And now there was the one, and now there's a few others that still want to kind of be heard before they ever get to any kind of decision or vote. And we wait.
Yeah, I don't know what all that means. I mean, as far as what do they want? I mean, just to be heard? I mean,
I think there's a little bit of that. I think you might, you always have the conflict with these things when it comes to athletics, business, and academics. You're going to have that. That's why you have people who are a part of, the board, the regents, whatever you want to call them, governance. But I think it's now, okay, he had his chance or she had her chance. I want to have my voice. And it might even be in return volley to what was said or what was brought up a week or two ago. So you got egos involved here. You hope it's for the best of what's for Colorado. For just Colorado, that's all that matters. But it kind of seems like that has kind of pushed things down the road, so to speak. Again, here we are closing out yet another week.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's all fine and dandy. I mean, people need to, especially those involved in, big decisions, need to have their 2 cents put in, and, that's understandable. That starts to get way too political for me to care about, honestly. I'm not a politics guy, and the whole system of it and how it all works and the ins and outs of it. I just don't care. I really have never ever once been interested in it, really. And that's not to say that I don't get why some people do find it interesting. It's just, for me, it's not something that scratches my itch as far as like, oh, wow, let me learn more about this. I'd rather read about, some world wars, there's other things, but I know some people love politics. And so if you like politics, especially at the college level, there's lots of it to be found, and that might be super of interest of you. So good to know that. And, we'll see how that plays out. But, yeah, that's something that, too, will have a time limit on it, I would imagine, because, there's only so long I think people are going to wait that feel like they've got to eventually, or get off the pot, basically, to worry about Colorado's politics and their inner, workings. But there's time, still out there, so we'll see what happens with that ultimately. But, yeah, not surprised that, if there is a decision to even be made, whenever that time comes, yeah, I think everybody's going to want to be involved that needs to be involved, and that's understandable because if there is a decision, it's a pretty massive one. I mean, it is. It's a school-altering decision potentially if, in fact, it goes down that road. So, yeah, that's to be expected somewhat.
Garrett sent this to us in the group text today. It's from CBS Sports' David Cobb. I actually traded a text or two. I called him, and then we traded a couple of texts. He's out of the country on vacation until after 4th of July. We're going to invite him on the show. And the title of the story is Texas A&M Miami among 10 college football teams poised to bounce back, return to bowl game in 2023. So these are teams that last year underachieved, so to speak, based on expectations or just continued to struggle. The obvious picks in his article, Texas A&M, Miami, Appalachian State missed the postseason for the first time since 2014, went 6-6, but weren't eligible since two of their wins were against FCS teams. So there's the three teams. Two dogs when you talk about A&M and Miami with what they put into their football program, and a team in Appalachian State that A&M would rather not hear their name. Seems likely to bounce back. Michigan State, Florida Atlantic, and Auburn with their new head coach, of course, Hugh Freeze. Things will go well if breaks fall their way. Iowa State from the Big 12, Matt Rule in Nebraska, and Arizona, which, of course, has struggled. At the long shot, Virginia Tech. Last year, Virginia Tech was 3-8, had one game canceled because of a death. And so those are the teams that are, at least in categories, obvious, most likely, need breaks, and probably not bouncing back from 2022. A&M was the top of the list with Miami, and they play each other, as I mentioned earlier, in week number 2.
It's just subjective. I mean, those make sense. I mean, I don't know who else would maybe pop to mind for some people. A lot of those types of lists to debate and fight over if you so choose to go that route, depending on what exact type of list we're talking about and who's talking about it. But yeah, that seems like some pretty logical candidates, and I don't know. I feel like those are probably the same candidates we hear pretty much year after year in a lot of ways. Maybe not Appalachian State always, being mentioned in some category, but like bounce back. A&M's, been there before. Miami's been there before. So yeah, and then kind of poised to return. You say Iowa State, is that something?
Iowa State,
yeah.
Yep.
I mean, I don't think people have a good grasp on them, based on one of their beat writers that we talked to the other day. They don't have a great feel for who they're even going to have available based on the betting scandal. So that one kind of remains to be seen, how positive a direction they're moving. I mean, it seems like they're going to be better than last year. But, again, if it turns out that after their investigation that, the starting – I don't even want to speculate, but, starting impactful players are a part of whoever was gambling, then that could drastically change things. But we don't know that right now, and it may not matter, at all in the long run. And yeah, I could see them definitely as a bounce-back candidate.
And also the numbers, not only who they are, but the numbers. Is it 1 or 2 or 3, or is it 12? Again, not speculating, but we don't know that, and that's what they're going through, trying to figure that out. Iowa State, the note was 6 of their 8 Big 12 losses came by a single possession, limped to 4-8, ending their 5-year bowl streak. It's likely an aberration for a program that is on firm footing under 8th-year coach Matt Campbell. They play 5 games in the conference this year on the road, but 2 of them are against the newcomers, Brigham Young and Cincinnati. A win in one of those 2, along with a cutback in turnovers. Who knows? Don't turn it over. Iowa State, the Cyclones could be bowling yet again. So there we are with some of the stories to lead off the day here on 365 Sports. I did see one more basketball note. We mentioned that Rucker Park Big 12 event. Will Wade, who was at LSU, he's now at McNeese State. The NCAA, remember just yesterday, the Penny Hardaway 3-game suspension, no matter what the NCAA or whatever that other group is now that looks at infractions, investigations, violations. He got a 10-year suspension for 3 level 1 violations, and also given a 2-year show cause. So he'll miss the first 10 games of McNeese State's schedule, and also 2-year show cause. He is on the clock with that. All right, when we come back, we'll hear again. Last weekend was the Elite 11 quarterback camp, and we're going to come back with Charles Power from On3.com. He was there, his thoughts about that, and really national recruiting in general. This is 365 Sports. Craig Smoak, and I'm David Smoak. Don Shumidor and Coffee Beans in the Town West Shopping Center, off Valley Mills in Richland Drive in Waco. Went there yesterday, picked up a handful of cigars for the weekend for golf. Ashton, La Fontana, La Galera, and also I got one of the Sneaky brand, and I really enjoy how smooth their cigars are. A light, smooth feeling when it comes to La Fontana, both the Churchill and the Torpedo Edge, if you want it. They have a 48-foot walk-in humidor loaded with every brand you could imagine, the elite brands, world-ranked brands, including Cohiba and Padron and so much more. Ashton, Macanudo, I've mentioned those. CAO, I've mentioned those. Rocky Patel, a great brand of cigars in various flavors, and also if you want smoke. It's the place where you can find the humidor to put the cigars in. Also the pouches to keep them, I guess you could say, perfect. So when you go to light them and smoke them, they're going to be perfect. There's kind of a soft feel to them, not hard as a rock because they're dried out. And then on top of that, CBD products, Vita Dreams, to help you if you have struggles with falling asleep and getting those extra 30 to 45 to an hour minutes or an hour of sleep. The CBD product, Vita Dreams, I promise you, it works for me. Carol, Ashley, and Cheyenne, it's Don Shumidor and Coffee Beans in the Town West Shopping Center off Valley Mills and Richland Drive in Waco.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
It's Ram season at Allen Samuels in Waco, and the deals couldn't be any hotter. Shop the greatest selection of new inventory in Central Texas and save big on Ram trucks. Now offering 10% off MSRP on a new 2023 Ram 1500 Lone Star Crew Cab, or get 2.9% for 72 months. The choice is yours. Plus an extra $500 bonus cash to first responders. Allen Samuels in Waco is the place to shop Ram trucks. Visit today or browse online at allensamuelsdcj.com.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB Your Bank for Life. Member FDIC.
Do you or your kids get nervous about going to the dentist? Stonewood Dental, Dr. Steve Childress, he can help.
I've spent a career taking care of patients who as children had bad experiences, and now they're adults that hate going to the dentist. If I get a kid at 3 years old and they come every 6 months and it's a happy experience, it's normal for them. Now they have an accident at 6 or 7 or 8 at school. Now they have a broken tooth or a trauma, and they have to come here. They're used to lights, they're used to water in their mouth, they're used to experience, they already trust us. It's amazing what we can do with that kid without it being a negative thing. But if I see a 6 or 7 or 8 year old that's never been to the dentist, and now they have a trauma or an unfortunate unexpected toothache, it's harder to do that for that kid and it not be somewhat of a negative experience. So bottom line is I try to teach kids and adults and teenagers and everybody the way I'd want my family treated, which is where it's a necessary part of life. You just take care of it. It doesn't have to be that big a deal.
Learn more, stonewood-dental.com.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
Camille Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one. Commercial, farm and ranch, or residential, Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.camillejohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm. Welcome home.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
Here we go, this 3 o'clock hour. And Charles Power, On3 recruiting director, also handles the rankings with On3 national rankings and recruiting, but was also, along with others, at the Elite 11 camp out on the West Coast. He joins us on 365 Sports, Craig Smoak and David Smoak. Charles, thanks for your time. One, did you ever get over all of the delays and the flights to just get back home after the weekend?
Oh, yeah, I did. It actually wasn't nearly – it was not nearly as bad as it was around Christmas time, New Year's, when I was going to the Under Armour and All-American Bowl when all of Southwest flights went down. So as long as I don't have to get in a car and drive 14 hours, I'm good.
Yeah, okay. Well, thanks for being a part of the show. So
Sure.
this camp, this Elite 11, of course, it's blossomed into what it is. It's always been good. Was there a lot of separation among the group that were there? Did you have tiers? Did you feel like tiers of players' performances?
I think so. This year, I think there's always tiers. This year it probably was a little different. I think this 24 recruiting, the 24 cycle with quarterbacks, it's not like the strongest or deepest, especially relative to last year, which I thought was particularly very deep. I think there's a lot of guys who are 4-star types who could be, high NFL draft picks, that were quarterbacks in 2023. So 2024 does not appear to be that deep. So I think, that kind of informs typically the group we get to see at the Elite 11. So I think there was a little bit tier, especially too, it's a unique event in that it's probably the most objective thing we do on the recruiting calendar, at least from my perspective, because I think everybody kind of goes into it with different criteria, right? So are you dissecting the performance in a vacuum at the camp? Are you looking at traits that project long term? I mean, I try to do both and make our rankings of it a combination of both. But everybody's criteria differs. I guess that's all to say. Just from the event, I thought Julian Sayin, the Alabama commit, who was the Elite 11 counselors MVP and also our MVP, and Dylan Raiola, the 5-star who's committed to Georgia. I thought those two probably were a slight tier above the rest. And then after that, Ethan Grunkemeyer, the Penn State commit, was probably the most pleasant surprise out of the group. The Florida State commit, Luke Kromenhoek, I thought maybe showed the most upside of anybody there. And then the Ohio State commit, Aaron Noland, was just very, very solid. So I probably would stop at kind of that first tier of the top two, and the next three, I think, were probably the two most defined tiers of the 20 guys we saw.
Charles, we got a chance to check out Haas Haney in a playoff game last year, and he was an impressive guy. TCU obviously has got a pretty good run going right now with momentum, and he was their selection for this 24 class. What can you tell us about what you picked up from eyeing Haas Haney up close and personal, and how you think that factors into what TCU does with Sonny Dykes?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought Haas Haney was very impressive, and this is a setting that it really is not tailored to his strengths, right? Haas Haney is arguably the most athletic quarterback in this cycle. This is a guy who runs an electronic 4.4. He's a sub-11 100-meter guy, so he can really, really run. And you put on the film, I'm sure y'all probably saw this in person and watched him in the playoffs. And he got better as the season went on as a first-year starter, so he was really peaking in the playoffs, but he can run away from defensive backs. So seeing him in this passing setting, I thought he was very impressive. Like his velocity on short to intermediate passes, I think was in the top group. He's not a guy who has immense physical tools from like just a pure passing perspective, right? He's like probably 5'11", 185, not going to blow you away from a stature perspective, kind of smaller hands. So he really throws with his whole body. He generates a lot of his power via torque and just core power. And when you watch him throw, he's putting everything into it. And so he's kind of maximizing just his physical ability just as a passer. But I thought I think he finished like 8th for us in our subjective ranking. So it was a really good showing for Haas. And I think he's going to have a really good senior year. And he was kind of playing receiver a little bit as a sophomore. Last year was his first year as a starter at Aledo. So I think this was just a lot of positive momentum for him going into the fall. And I think if you look at just how he projects in TCU's offense, in Kendall Briles' scheme, I kind of think I could see them using him a little bit how Briles used Derek King that year at Houston, where he could just move around, do some unique stuff in the run game with him. He's different, but I really think he has a really good shot of being a very good college quarterback and a multi-year starter at TCU if the depth chart shakes the right way for him.
Charles, I want to make sure, is it Julian Sayin exactly the way it's spelled, or is it like okay, I was making sure. Alabama had the commitment to transfer with Buckner because there was concerns about maybe their quarterback play, Milroe, and who else was on the roster. They've got good young players, yet they have one apparently that's on his way. Is he that kind of player that we've seen at Alabama? I know Bennett at Georgia was not highly thought of, and he won a couple of national titles, but is this what Alabama would be used to?
I think so. I think it's Alabama getting back to recruiting the type of quarterbacks that they had when they had that run of Tua, Jalen Hurts, Mac Jones. I think he's in line with that group. I think Julian Sayin of this 24 quarterback cycle is probably the safest. He's a guy who is just very technically refined, extremely accurate. I thought he's probably the most accurate quarterback at the Elite 11. And I was fortunate enough to go see him at the OT7 finals 2 days after the Elite 11. He went over and played the last day there. And honestly, what he did that day at the OT7 finals was even more impressive than what he did at the Elite 11. I mean, it was one of the better 7-on-7 performances I've seen from a quarterback in a couple years. Probably the best I've seen since probably Drake May. I saw Drake May right before the pandemic in 7-on-7, and Sayin would have been that caliber. It was just very impressive with his timing and accuracy. He's not necessarily going to blow you away like on the hoof, just kind of seeing he's probably a little over 6'1", and more of a pocket passer, but he's extremely accurate and surgical and not a small guy at all. I mean, you go stand up beside him, he's not like a Bryce Young deal where he's like 5'10", but he is extremely good, and I think he'll push as a top quarterback in this cycle before it's all said and done.
We've heard a lot about Dylan Raiola, and we follow along kind of with Matt Rule a bit because he was here at Baylor for a time, and root for him to do well at Nebraska. Missed out on the big connection, legacy connection there, but Georgia's on fire, so it's understandable, and they've actually got a couple of quarterbacks that were at this camp. What do you see though from Raiola? Why is there so much buzz about him for people who've been hearing that name and have been following along in recruiting? What is it about him that makes him stand out so much?
Yeah, I mean, Dylan Raiola, he's been the big name in this cycle really since his sophomore year at Burleson. I think you go back and just look at what he was doing as a 10th grader. It was just very advanced, and he was making like no look passes, and just the arm talent jumped off the tape for him. He just got he was very developed physically. I think he probably was like 6'3", 215 as a 10th grader. So he's one who's been on the scene for a while, and I think developed a little earlier than this group. But seeing him out there at the Elite 11, I think he kind of served as a little bit of a reminder, coming off of I think it's safe to say just a disappointing junior year at Chandler High School in Arizona. I think he had a very positive showing at the Elite 11, and it was a little bit of a reminder of hey, there's a reason why I'm a 5-star. And I thought he answered the bell in a competitive situation, which I thought was really encouraging. Just a lot of arm strength, but throws with a lot of touch as well, and can layer his throws. I thought he had the best deep ball at the event, and got better as the week went on. Had a really good pro day, and probably had the best 7-on-7 session of that group as well. With him, it's just a very interesting evaluation because he's now been to 4 high schools. His sophomore year was probably his best year so far. So there's going to be a lot of eyes on him as a senior. Just from my experience in doing this, I think how these quarterbacks play, particularly as seniors, tends to be the most predictive evaluation point we have for the most part. So all of these guys are going to be watching really closely, but Dylan Rail is going to have a lot of eyes on him this fall. He just announced he was transferring yesterday to Buford High School, powerhouse in Georgia, where he'll team up with a bunch of highly touted recruits. A lot of blue chip recruits are on that team. So it'll be very interesting to see how that plays out. But I thought he had a very encouraging performance at the Elite 11.
Charles, was there someone that perhaps does not get a lot of ink? Because there were some 5 stars and some that get more attention than others, but were there one or two that perhaps are sometimes overlooked that popped out at you as, man, maybe we need to look at where they are, and also they just look really good and right in the middle of it?
Yeah, I would probably start with the Penn State commit, Ethan Buckemeyer. Just from a pure passing perspective, his mechanics, the way the ball came out of his hand, he was as good as anybody there. He's a guy who I believe is a 3-star across the board in the industry, and I would suspect that'll change. He's probably a little better in camp settings than he is just on Friday nights. He doesn't play at a powerhouse high school, so it's not like he's putting up gaudy stats. So I think seeing him in that neutral setting was really informative. When you stack him up alongside all of these other top quarterbacks, he looked no different. He can go throw for throw with anybody. So he was one. He's probably the one that I would zero in on. But I think too, we have him ranked in the top 50, but the Florida State commit Luke Kromenhoek, I think maybe my biggest revelation coming out of that event was he might have the highest upside of anybody. And I think that's saying a lot when you have a guy like Dylan Raiola, you have a guy like DJ Lagway, obviously y'all are very familiar with his Baylor background. Just given how big and just physically developed those two are with their arms, I think I look at Luke Kromenhoek and see a guy kind of my comp for him is Ryan Tannehill. If he's 6'3", close to 6'4", 190, kind of a lean frame, but he's going to continue to fill out. Very good athlete, one of the bigger arms there. The way he throws the ball actually reminds me a lot of Ryan Tannehill. So I could see him being a guy that we look at a couple years from now, and he could potentially be a high NFL draft pick, one who just continues to develop. Similar to Haas Haney, he was a first-year varsity starter as a junior, was playing behind a former Elite 11 quarterback, Holden Gariner, who signed with Auburn. So I think he's one who will probably continue to get better just the more in-game reps he gets. Because that's just I think quarterback is such a confidence and experience position. I really enjoy seeing how these guys continue to get better over their high school careers. We put out these early rankings. We identify the Dylan Raiolas when they're in 10th grade, but really a lot of times we don't really know quite how good all these guys are until their senior year. A lot of times when their recruitment's kind of already done. So that's the fun part for me. Whereas the recruitment might be over in most cases because a lot of these guys are committing this time of year in June. I really enjoy tracking the senior seasons and kind of seeing who improves and who doesn't. But I think a lot of times the Elite 11 can serve as a good point of reference for us, and maybe these guys kind of showing early signs of development, and it's a springboard into their senior year. And I think Luke Kromenhoek, the Florida State commit, and Ethan Grunkemeyer, the Penn State commit, are two that I would kind of earmark as ones who I think could have big senior years.
Charles, another guy that got a chance to see up close last year and was impressed by was Will Hammond. And it seems like he's one of those guys that's now starting to gain a lot of steam after what he was able to display, and just more people getting eyes on him. Obviously, he's a part of what right now is a pretty fiery run in recruiting for Joey McGuire and Texas Tech. Your thoughts on him as the quarterback centerpiece in their class, and just how much upside is there with Will Hammond?
Yeah, I think Will Hammond, I came away thinking he's a great fit for what they try to do on offense. I think he fits with Zach Kitley's scheme just perfectly. He did not have one of the stronger arms there, but he's very accurate, and I could just see him translating into an air raid system really well. Very accurate and good timing, kind of in the short to intermediate passes, and he's one too. I think for a typical air raid quarterback, I think he's going to be a lot more athletic than you typically see. I mean, I think you could put him in a Mike Leach offense, and he could be, could make all those throws and could, throw mesh and Y cross in his sleep. But I think he also has a little more athleticism as well. He's a guy who runs 4.6, he ran for like 700 yards last year or something like that. So he brings a little extra dimension. But I came away impressed with what we saw. He was very consistent on each day. I think he finished maybe 10th for us in our top 11 rankings from the event. So was definitely in the top half of the group, and I think it was a pretty positive showing for Will Hammond. And I think too, like when you look at what Texas Tech's doing on the recruiting trail, I mean, you have to be impressed. And I think he's going to have some talent around him. I think Texas Tech has done a great job recruiting the offensive line. Like they're trending heavily for the 5-star Micah Hudson, the receiver. So I think it'll be interesting to kind of see, if they kind of build on this momentum they have, because like you said, they've had a pretty strong couple weeks here in June. So if you're Will Hammond, I think you have to be pretty excited, one, with how you looked at the Elite 11, but also too, the talent is going to be around you in Lubbock, at least so it appears. And
things have changed, Charles, where you had the rankings for high school players. The transfer portal now has taken over. Is it almost like a pie, a pizza now with different ingredients about how teams can stack their roster and the rankings that go with it?
Mm-hmm. I think it's now more than ever. There's so many different ways you can build a roster, and I think everybody has different philosophies, and I think some of it is tailored to the school. Like, what's your geographic recruiting footprint? I think there's different portal strategies for each team. So it's really interesting. I mean, I think this is a time in college sports, especially college football, that's one of the most transformative couple years, just with NIL and transfer portal and all those different added components into recruiting. I agree with you. It's definitely a very fluid period. And also too, I part of what I do at On3 is I track these guys as true freshmen. I wrote a lot about Richard Reese last fall, just kind of going through and monitoring true freshman performances. And we have guys that were big recruits that were good as true freshmen that are already in the portal and already at another school. So I think it's a deal where, maybe as when we were following this in the past, a recruit's destination was pretty much locked in stone once they sign. Like, they're probably going to finish their career there, at least exhaust their eligibility, maybe do a grad transfer. Whereas now they might be gone the first semester. So it's just it's just not as not as settled. But there's definitely a ton of ways to build a roster, and it is interesting to me to see different staffs implement different strategies. And I know that it's some of it's philosophical, some of it depends on the school.
Charles, don't take this wrong, or any site to take this wrong, but how much do programs try to at least influence the rankings? Does that ever, not that you let it, but does that happen?
Mm-hmm. It doesn't come across my desk as much as you would think. And we purposely I feel like just for me, I purposely try to filter a lot of information. I'm not talking to college coaches all day. It's not a deal where they're necessarily hitting us up and asking for rankings. So it usually is not one-to-one in terms of the contact. So if they were to reach out, it would probably be through someone like a mutual coworker or acquaintance, I guess I would say. So I surprisingly don't get that a ton, which thankfully, because I feel like that would just kind of, I think we try to be as independent and arbiter in this situation as possible. And sometimes honestly, you kind of feel a little bit like a referee. Mm-hmm. And just try to come at it with it as honest a perspective as possible. Because really, at the end of the day, my main task is just trying to be as accurate and project as honestly as we can. We try to, our basis is kind of judged off the NFL draft. So I'm really trying to project and peg as many high draft picks as possible as 5-star blue chip recruit type. So that's the objective. And fortunately, I don't get a ton of requests or noise with college coaches. But I'll also add, for us, a lot of what we get from college is information. It's kind of, so some of it's subjective, but for us, it's a lot of it's like really like data and heights, weights, arm lengths, hand sizes. That's really kind of what we get into in terms of asking information from colleges, and that just helps us. Like the more we know about the prospects, I feel like the more accurate our rankings are. So this time of year for me is very busy from a data collection standpoint, and just trying to get as good of information as we can get, and the most up-to-date information on these prospects. Because a lot of these guys, I mean, their bodies look completely different from sophomore year to junior year. So I'm trying to figure out, okay, like how much does he weigh? How tall is he? How long are his arms? Is this the right position? But it's a lot of stuff like that, more so than can you make this guy a 4-star? So but yeah, I guess that's a long answer, but it's a fun and definitely it's a fun and very active part of the year in June for sure.
Last thing, you mentioned Tech, and obviously we're waiting. Everyone's waiting eventually what Micah Hudson might make or pull the trigger. We mentioned the running back commitment Texas was able to get today from a state that they do well in Arizona. Is Florida right now among the top teams? Are they the most with a surge at this particular time, or is it somebody else?
I think Florida's up there just because they had so many commits this past weekend. But I think a lot of it just comes in waves. Like I think so a lot of it tends to hinge on who had big visit weekends. So it's very like cyclical and kind of oscillates, I think, with a lot of these teams. I mean, I would definitely peg Texas Tech as one of the hottest teams because I just think they have a lot of positive momentum, and I think for that staff, and probably similar to Florida, it's just the benefit of like a full recruiting cycle. Like they had extended period of time to build relationships with these players. I mean, they probably started talking with a lot of these guys that they're getting commitments from when they were sophomores versus basically speed dating for 1 year or even in that first class a matter of weeks. So I think you're just seeing. I think some of it is just the big weekends these teams have had. We'll just have a lot of their big targets in on one weekend, or just have a really good weekend where they get several and it kind of just builds on like snowballs. But I think also a lot of it is just the taking advantage of just having some staff continuity and ability to build relationships with the prospects dating to when they're sophomores. So I think Florida's for sure in there. But it's this time of year's fun, but a lot of it changes once you put toe to leather, and everybody's undefeated right now. So it always becomes interesting in the fall when teams start getting wins and losses. So.
All right. Charles, thanks for your time. We appreciate it. Charles Power, On3.com football lead scout, also is part of what they do when they rank the players. And we get his feedback from the Elite 11, but much more, including the note about Tech, and also Florida's had a really nice run, and there's a lot more to come. There's a lot of big names out there, and sometimes you look at outside the top 10 or 15, and there's a program that always finishes in the top 3, 4, or 5, and they just haven't, they get to pick and choose when they want, who they want, and they make the big surge near the end. So we'll see what happens with that. I love the Max Olson piece today as we went over at theathletic.com, the 2019 rankings, and then 5 years later, where is everybody? And you see the differences in once evidence has been seen for 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, I'll again say, and I don't know if it was mentioned in the piece or not, I mean, that did include the COVID years. So there's probably some, more exits than you would typically see, or some more downgrading of classes based on guys not panning out for whatever reason because of, like, look at Dave Aranda's class, that initial class. So, like, that would factor in. Would that have probably been his class had it been, an actual real year of recruiting? Probably not. It probably would have been slightly different. Like, would there been as many defections and transfers all across the country had it not been for that? Probably not, because guys would have been able to take their visits and not just blindly signed up in a lot of cases to what it would have been like the 21 recruiting class or whatever. So, factored in there, I do think is a little bit of an outlier that hopefully we don't ever have to experience again. But yeah, I think it's interesting to look back. It doesn't change like the exhilaration that Ohio State fan had when they signed like another top 5 class, or Texas fan or Alabama fan or whatever. But it is, it's not so much a knock on them if their classes didn't work out, because they got really all the, the extracurricular benefit from all the hype at the time. But it is great to acknowledge those who did a good job holding on to guys and then developing those guys, and not just bringing in transfers or what have you. They actually had their class. They kept their class for the most part. They developed their class. They sent that class off to major success, whether it be in the college ranks or, even beyond that. So, yeah, Jeff Traylor deserves a lot of credit for having a borderline top 75 class, and then when you look at it like more of a top 20 class. I think that's good to be acknowledged for those coaches that are, able to, have a good run like that developing. So, yeah, it's interesting. I appreciate Charles talking about how subjective this all is. I think sometimes you come across rankings people and they like get offended because they probably are getting jabbed at constantly because you go on Twitter as an analyst and why is this guy not 4-star? You're an idiot. You don't know what like I'm sure there's millions of those tweets every day for guys like him to have to sort through, and some good ones from time to time as well. But it is all very subjective, and guys like him do a great job of trying to break it down as best as possible. But there is some subjectivity to it, and then there's a lot of unforeseen parts to it as well, right? I mean, there's things that you don't necessarily account for or know about at the time when you're doing those rankings. So they work with what they have, and I think he does a really good job with that, while also acknowledging like, hey, I'm not like the spoken word, like there's different interpretations for some people. This is how I view it. And, I just appreciate that kind of openness about the whole process, instead of these are the rankings, if you don't agree with them, you're the problem kind of a deal. That's a nice approach to have, and a friendly approach to have.
We'll have Sam Kahn, theathletic.com. He'll join us in the next segment. Sam has written the article about what does the Micah Hudson commitment, if it happens for Texas Tech and they hold on to it, what does that mean for Texas Tech? Kind of went over their history with stuff like that, and also the fact that one of the teams, or it looks like the other team they're competing with, Texas, they've had players who committed elsewhere, and then in the end, they've ended up, Anthony Hill is one among a few others. Was it Banks, the lineman, committed, and they end up kind of just waiting it out. But it would be a massive commitment for Joey McGuire and company on Micah Hudson if and when that happens, the young stud from Lake Belton. This is 365 Sports.
In our logo and advertising, we say we are people that you can count on. What does that mean? It starts with providing a quality vehicle and quality service at a fair price. But it also means we do what we say we will do, and we treat people fairly with respect. It starts by hiring great people, good local folks who work hard with a caring attitude. Our employees are the real reason we are people that you can count on. Put us to the test and see for yourself that at Richard Carr Motors, we are people you can count on.
Waco Custom Marketplace is your hometown grocery store with a full-service butcher shop and bakery. Hi, this is David Smoak. The butcher shop can take your customized orders for seafood, pork, and poultry, and custom cut your favorite steaks from bacon-wrapped fillets to T-bone to bone-in ribeyes. Cut specifically the way you want. They have Norwegian salmon fillets, catfish fillets, sliced ham or turkey and lunch meat, variety of cheese available, and several options of sausage links. Fresh chicken breast or whole chickens, sliced bacon, pork chops, ground beef, marinated beef, and chicken fajitas, and always large briskets available, plus fresh vegetables. So the great product, customer service, and family tradition of the Bauer family continues at Waco Custom Marketplace, open Monday through Saturday. A full-service butcher shop and bakery available. Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco, or WacoCustomMarketplace.com.
Baylor Scott and White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott and White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
There are 26 letters in the alphabet, over 600,000 words in the dictionary, and just 3 of them said together can change everything. Let's order pizza. Those 3 words lead to dough made from scratch and 3 fresh signature cheeses that blanket golden crust in a heavenly melt on Marco's Pizza that'll blow your mind. So visit Marcos.com to order and stop by Marco's Pizza in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
It was broad daylight. I stepped into a gas station for 5 minutes to grab a snack, and just like that, my car was broken into. They made out like a bandit. My laptop, my phone, everything. I called my agent to see what could be done, and he restored my faith in humanity. My claim was processed so quickly, and I was able to recover my losses.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
It takes time to reach goals. It's a truth that applies to more than sports. It goes for your financial goals as well. You work hard for your money, and you deserve an investment strategy that lines up with your game plan. And Chuck Verno, your Edward Jones financial advisor, can help. If financial investments aren't putting forth the effort you desire, stop by today for a financial review. Chuck Verno, 720 North 64th Street in Waco, 254-732-1161. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com. Enjoying the show? Hit the like button and subscribe.
Sam Kahn, theathletic.com, with us a lot, and we appreciate it whenever he is. Sam wrote the story about the recruitment of Lake Belton 5-star wide receiver Micah Hudson, and joins Craig Smoak and David Smoak on 365 Sports. Sam, yeah, this is interesting. Great article, by the way. You looked at all the angles about if he commits, what does that mean? Texas always seems to kind of wait their time, and they end up pulling some people back. I mentioned Anthony Hill. Your thoughts about what this would mean to Joey McGuire and Texas Tech if they could land Micah Hudson?
It would be huge. It would be historic for Texas Tech because in the modern era, since we started doing recruiting rankings in the early 2000s, Tech has never signed a 5-star recruit. I had mentioned in my story they had tried when Cliff Kingsbury was there to get Kyler Murray, and that was not really successful for a lot of reasons. Just mainly, I think, because the program profile wasn't there. They did end up getting a commitment from Jarrett Stidham back then, but Stidham was kind of a borderline 5-star depending on what recruiting service you're using. But of course, he didn't end up signing there because he flipped to Baylor at the end. But they have not been a program that attracts that level of recruit. And to me, this speaks volumes of how well that staff has done in this recruitment, because this is not a kid. Micah Hudson is not a kid that Texas Tech identified early. Like last year, they identified Calvin Simpson-Hunt from Waxahachie very early. Before he had a recruiting ranking, they already had him offered. They already had him committed. And then he rose up the ranking. Micah Hudson's a guy who's a legitimate, 5-star recruit who has heard pitches from every coach out there, has been taking visits to plenty of schools, has seen a lot of what there is to see. And here we are in the middle of June, 6 months before signing day, and he's heavily, heavily considering Texas Tech, and Tech is probably the team to beat. That in and of itself, in my opinion, is a big-time accomplishment, because Texas Tech is just not a destination for them. And so I think it would have a huge impact just telling where this program is going in recruiting under Joey McGuire. And also I think it could have a residual effect on the class itself. I think when you see top 10 recruits go somewhere and go somewhere that maybe isn't traditional, it gets other recruits to kind of pay attention to what's going on over there. And so I think if Hudson does end up committing to Texas Tech, this will open some eyeballs amongst others in the 2024 and 2025 class.
Sam, I have a pretty good idea because I watched some of those guys do their thing here in Waco for a little while, and it's hard not to, root for or, be impressed by or like, a lot of those guys. Joey McGuire right at the top of the list. But what is it about Tech in particular that is a draw for Micah Hudson? Is it the personal side? Is it he loves Lubbock? Like, what do you think it is on their end outside of just obviously they're keen evaluators and they get on guys? But as you mentioned, he's been offered by everybody. So what is it about Texas Tech that seems to stand out to Micah Hudson?
There's a few things, but I would say the number one thing has been the relationship. That is a staff that I thought for a first-time head coach, which Joey is, I thought he did a really good job of putting together his coaching staff. And thought he really did a really good job with his personnel staff. Of course, you guys are familiar with James Blanchard, the director of player personnel, Brian Nance, the director of scouting. They were also at Baylor before. The relationships come in key here. Brian Nance, who's their scouting director, who of course was a player at Baylor and got his start in the recruiting department at Baylor. Brian has known Micah Hudson, has been aware of him for quite some time. And built that relationship very early. They offered, and they were one of the first to offer him when Blanchard and Nance were at Baylor. They offered him way back 2 years ago when Joey was still at Baylor as well. So that relationship started back in summer of 21. So you're talking a 2-year relationship that they were in early. They were one of the very first Power 5 schools to offer him. And then when they got to Tech, he was one of the first guys they offered there. And that relationship has been really strong. And then they brought in Justin Johnson, of course. You guys know Juice. Juice has done a really good job. He's a guy who's played receiver in that offense. He played in the air raid at Houston under Cliff Kingsbury and Dana Holgerson. So he kind of played the position that Micah probably would play, if Micah ends up at Texas Tech. So I think the offense and the opportunity to go catch 70 to 100 balls in that offense, the relationship with Nance, Blanchard, McGuire, Zach Kitley has done a really good job. Juice Johnson's done a good job. I think that's been a big thing. Certainly there's a family tie there. His dad, Desmond Royal, played defensive tackle at Texas Tech in the 80s. Certainly that doesn't hurt, although from what I've been told, his dad has pretty much let, Micah do his thing. It hasn't been like a big, heavy influence in terms of, hey, you got to go to Texas Tech and all that. From everything I can gather, it sounds like he's been pretty let the kid make his own decision. But certainly it doesn't hurt that you have some familiarity there, and his dad knows what it's like out there. And it just seems like he's a low-key kid. He's not a big flashy guy. He's not necessarily looking for to be the top headline and all that stuff and make all this huge exposure. I think he's a little bit of a different guy, and I think the opportunity to go be a star somewhere where other people are not probably appeals to him a little bit.
Sam, a lot of times when a program has not landed many of them or none of them, it's not just landing that player, and a lot of times, especially a quarterback, but what does it mean when you do? Does that open up the floodgates or at least open up maybe 2 or 3 others that perhaps you probably weren't going to get because he becomes the godfather of the class?
Yeah, 100%, because I think we've seen it lots of times over the years. When a team that does not land that type of recruit gets one, it gets other people's attention. It gets other recruits' attention that they start to wonder, what does this guy see over there that I'm not seeing? And it maybe makes you take a second look. It doesn't mean that all of a sudden a bunch of guys are going to follow you, but it certainly makes them give you a longer look. And if you give that longer look and you open the door and those coaches build some more relationships, then maybe it ends up paying off in the end. I remember I mentioned Kyler Murray at the top. I remember when Kyler came out of Allen High, guys wanted to go where he went because they knew how good of a player he was. They knew what he would be long term. And so when he ended up making his decision, that had a residual effect on that class at A&M that year because there were guys that wanted to go play with him. There are guys that have that talent or that charisma or just that mentality that other players respect it and say, you know what, if that guy had all these choices and chose to go there, maybe I should take a look and see what they've got going on.
Sam, where do you sit on who could be the kind of leaders of the new Big 12? Do you see Tech fitting that mold? I know TCU obviously a lot of success right now, or do you think it's going to be more of a wide open field, kind of like it has been where it's K-State one year, Baylor one year, Oklahoma, they had a more solid run than others, but how do you kind of see this, knowing what Tech's putting together, knowing what TCU's done, and all the rest of it? What do you kind of see as the mood at the top of the conference moving forward?
It's so hard to tell because of how good and balanced the competition is in the league, but I will say this. I think the top schools, the top 2 or 3 schools in this conference are going to come from this group: K-State, Oklahoma State, TCU, Baylor, and Tech. K-State obviously just won the conference, and I think you have to like the direction they're moving under Chris Kleiman, and they've won at least 8 games each 3 of the last 4 years. And obviously they've won 3 Big 12 titles in their history. So there's some history there. Oklahoma State has a stability factor with Gundy, longest tenured head coach in the league. They played for the title 2 years ago, were 1 play away from winning it. They've won double-digit games 7 times since 2010. But they've only won double-digit games once in the last 5 years, and I think this is a big year for them. So how they do this year, I think, is going to be very telling for Oklahoma State. TCU made the playoff, and that's something that no school outside of Oklahoma has done in the Big 12. And that says a lot, but I do think it's hard to repeat that success. But when you look at all the ingredients, TCU's got them. The money, donors, good recruiting footprint, good location. They use the transfer portal well. I think they've got a good staff. Baylor, I think, has to be in that conversation. They've won 3 Big 12 titles in the last decade. They're well-resourced. They're building facilities. I also do think, though, that this is a big year for them to see how they go after they had a really great year 2 years ago winning the conference, had a down year last year. I want to see how do they respond and what is the true identity of a Baylor football team under Dave Aranda. I think this year kind of tells us that case, but when you look at the last decade, there's no reason Baylor shouldn't be in that conversation. And then when we talk about Texas Tech, they haven't really won at that level. They haven't won more than 8 games in the last 13 years. But when you look at the trajectory, you look at the way they're recruiting, you look at the investment they put in NIL, they're putting huge investment in facilities. I do think they're on that trajectory to get into that conversation. So of those, of the teams that are going to be there, those are the 5 that I would choose from. And right now, if I'm picking one right now, I think I'm a little bit keen on K-State and Oklahoma State just because I like the 2 coaches there and the direction that the K-State's going, and I like the stability that Gundy has provided to Oklahoma State at this time.
It seems like, and I don't know, just thinking about it, but since Matt Rule's first year, 1-11, we know it was a disaster, and they were just trying to survive, overcoming everything that occurred at Baylor. And the next year, they were pretty good. I think that was okay. The next year, no way anyone expected them to play for the Big 12 title. They did. And then he leaves, and Baylor drops back to 2-7. COVID had a lot to do with it and a coaching change. No one expected 12-2. Last year, they went backwards. Does that mean that they're primed to surprise a few people? And how important is it for Aranda to put together a second winning season or better after right now just 1 of 3?
Yeah, no, I think it's huge because if you don't have a good season this year and you're back to the 6-6 type year, I think you start to have people ask the question, well, did you win the Big 12 title because you had a lot of the talent that was on the roster already that was recruited by your predecessor? And I think it's a legitimate question. This is starting to look more like Dave Aranda's team now in terms of, and they've turned members of the staff over a few times. They've done some more work in the transfer portal a lot more aggressively this year than they have in the past. And I know that was an adjustment for Dave. And one thing I'll give Dave credit for is Dave really is willing to make changes when he realizes that something he didn't work. And he's usually the first one to say, hey, I made this decision, it didn't work out, let's fix it. And I like that about him. But I do think, yes, do they have potential to take a step up this year? 100%. Because when we look at, let's not forget, they were going into the second week in November last year, 6-3, and had a chance to go. If they would have won out, they would have been able to go to the Big 12 title. So they were in that conversation in November, and then of course we all know what happened. They lost 3 games in a row, but they had TCU on the ropes. I mean, they took a fire drill field goal to beat them. You know, they lost a close game at BYU that the offense was just a little bit disjointed, and it was a tough environment, and obviously it didn't go their way. There were some opportunities there that they had last year that they could have easily ended up 8 wins or 9 wins possibly if some things bounced a different direction. But so I don't think it's a bad team. I don't think it was a bad team. I think it was just some things just didn't go their way, and maybe they're just still searching for their identity a little bit. But I do think they are going to be better this year. Now, are they 8-4 better, or are they 10-2 contending for the conference title better? That I don't know, and that's what's going to be fascinating to see.
How about a more not an angry Dave Aranda, but one who's not going to put up with the we saw A.J. McCarty recently, who's probably, I don't know where he ends up at Tech or whoever. But there are thoughts that perhaps that was Dave maybe putting his foot down on just nothing bad, but just enough, And your thoughts about a tougher, not angrier, but more demanding Dave Aranda.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I think it harkens back to that quote that he gave in spring football about finding that balance of giving guys opportunities and giving guys second chances and third chances, but eventually getting run over. And it's hard because you want to instill discipline in your program, but you also want players to feel like they can come to you and that you care about them and that it's not just a transactional nature in the relationship. And I think Dave is more aware of that, and he has more human being to him than most college coaches that I've come across, and I appreciate that. But it is a challenge, and so there's a fine line of him being tougher and making those decisions, which I think are critical. You have to win at a high level. I can promise you, Kirby Smart and Nick Saban are certainly not having problems making those decisions. But you also have to be yourself, because if you are not yourself and you start trying to be somebody else, the players are going to see right through that. They're not dumb. They know who you are. They know who you've been. And so it's a really fine line to walk, to get tougher and hold people accountable while at the same time still being who you are. And that's where I think Dave Aranda is going to have to master that. And it's it's an evolution. It's an ongoing evolution for him. But like I said, I appreciate his candor, his introspection, because I know a lot of guys in that position who will just keep doing the same thing and hope for different results because that's the way they've always done it. And Dave has shown a willingness to change and adjust as time goes on to try to make his team better.
Sam, great article on the Micah Hudson sweepstakes and how it affects Texas Tech, or could, and also Texas among others. Thanks for your time as always. We appreciate it whenever you're available.
No problem. Thanks, y'all. Take care.
Sam Kahn, theathletic.com, with us on the story he wrote. Appreciate that. Also, Powers and the on3.com and the Elite 11, and also just recruiting in general.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a little while since we've stopped down and focused on, kind of the recruiting storylines that are out there, but it's a prime time to do so because there's a lot going on, whether it's Elite 11 wrapping up or whether it's, the saga of Micah Hudson's decision. I will say this, he brought up the ability of that staff to find people quicker than others. And this is not the case with Micah Hudson, but he brought up the example of last year with Calvin Simpson-Hunt, right? And what a prospect he blew up into, but where Calvin Simpson-Hunt signed, right?
Ohio State.
He signed with Ohio State. And so that's the thing is it's all great right now, and it's cool that they're favored and everything, but it's kind of like the article that reflects back on what you actually did. It's they still got to land him. That's the part is you would almost feel like they have because of the way it's being discussed right now and all of the talk about it, but he hasn't officially committed. And even when he does, I think that, even if you feel like you've got a ironclad safe that's going to prevent anybody from infiltrating, until that pen hits paper, it's recruiting and you don't know what the hell can happen. So Calvin Simpson-Hunt, that should have been their crown jewel, and instead he turns out to be another Ohio State Buckeye. So that's still part of this whole story, but the simple fact that they are presumed or shown to be in the lead and all that, I think, is great for Texas Tech. I think it's a testament to, Joey McGuire and that staff and the ability that they have on the recruiting side of things. And I also think it's potentially a tremendous thing for the Big 12 of somebody who's a high-profile player going, I could probably go make more money somewhere else, or I could go be one of 10 5-stars on another roster, but I want to be the guy here and do it my way and do it differently than most players of my caliber and just go to Alabama like everybody else or go to, wherever like everybody else. So, we'll see what happens, obviously. Long way to play out here, even if he does commit like right now.
Right.
You still have all these months to go until it actually becomes official. But they're in a really good spot, obviously, and they've got a lot of steam that's building and a lot of momentum that's building. And, I'm excited to see what they do with all of it, because there's clearly something bubbling up. And you look at what's happening in Lubbock and what's happening in Fort Worth. We know what can happen in Waco. We know what's going on in Manhattan. There's some other places kind of trying to figure some things out right now, but it's going to be a very fun and feisty Big 12, I think. They might not have a national championship contender at the top, every single year per se, but I think it's going to be a fun brand of football. It's going to be ultra competitive, and things like the Micah Hudson recruitment are going to be fascinating storylines that can kind of propel it one way or the other.
All right, thanks to Sam Kahn, also Charles Power. We appreciate his time as well. A lot of college football recruiting and discussion in that, and a couple of those articles we brought up about, and it's always good. Look at the rankings 4 or 5 years later, look at them again, as Max Olson did, and then we'll also get into a few things about that. We'll get back to that, teams that have underachieved or have been kind of in a funk, and can they bounce back this year in what was also written. But we're not done. The NBA draft tonight, College World Series, the elimination game, Wake Forest and LSU tonight just after 6 o'clock. We've mentioned that. But coming up next, Mickey Spagnola, DallasCowboys.com, and this is 365 Sports. Pioneer still in pipe. PioneerBoys.com, 1943, they opened up their doors, and they were really good forever. They survived big stores that have come in to whatever city, in this particular case, Waco, that have more of everything, and so they can charge less. But you cannot just make up customer service. Loyalty, commitment to a product, to a business, to those who sell it. Pioneer Steel and Pipe did that and has done that since 1943. And then, all of a sudden, they got bigger, better, faster, and stronger. But don't lose what they've always had, the values of what they do with business. They're now in a brand new location just east of 35 in Waco, on Loop 340 and what is also Highway 6. They have a distribution center that's it's part of the business, part of the big, massive facility that now allows even better, more efficient ability for you to get your product, pick it up, take it home. They have different lengths of tubing, pipe, steel, metal. You don't have to go anywhere to cut it, or you don't have to cut it. They've cut it for you. So it's so much more efficient, so much faster, and yet there's that great customer service and product. Pioneer Steel and Pipe, PioneerBoys.com.
The future's bright. The time is now.
College is what you make it. It's a late-night pizza run and all-nighters coding a new project. It's having big dreams and making them a reality. It's a professor who knows your name and your story. It's preparation for your future, your calling, your life. And at Baylor, it's even more. Baylor, where lights shine bright.
Petty Clinic Men's Healthcare in Woodway is now proud to offer you men an exceptional weight management body sculpting product called semaglutide, also known as Ozempic or Wegovy. Semaglutide is an FDA-approved weight management medication. Once-a-week injections of this powerful medication offers an average body fat weight loss of 20% within the first year of treatment. In addition to body sculpting, semaglutide also normalizes blood sugars and has the clinical research proof of reducing blood pressure, cholesterol, stroke, and heart attack risk. If you're like most men and you have stubborn fat that will just not respond to typical diets and exercise, then help is finally here. Semaglutide, affordable, highly effective. Google search Petty Clinic Waco and reach out to the Petty Clinic team today for a free consultation with Dr. Petty to see if semaglutide is right for you. Go to pettycliniclowt.com.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at alliancebanktexas.com. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
Boots add protection. Good boots help you climb better and move forward faster. And when your son or daughter steps into the boots of a U.S. Army officer, they also learn how to lead. In these boots, they'll gain more confidence with expert training in one of more than 150 occupational specialties. In these boots, they'll stand a little taller and lead a team with diverse backgrounds and areas of expertise to successfully accomplish whatever challenge comes next. In these boots, they'll earn respect with valuable experience from day one that will give them solid footing for success into the future. Highly qualified candidates who earn a spot on our team can receive comprehensive health care coverage, college tuition assistance, and a bonus of up to $40,000. See all the things your son or daughter can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 4 o'clock hour is sponsored by Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store, specializing in custom jewelry and repair, all in-house.
Now here's David Smoak and Craig Smoak.
All right, here we go. Mickey Spagnola, DallasCowboys.com with us on 365 Sports. Mickey, thank you very much for your time. So my question is, of the coaching changes on the staff of Mike McCarthy, obviously he's taking over the play calling. Kellen Moore had been doing that, not that McCarthy didn't have an influence. So your thoughts about which of the changes among the staff do you think might have the biggest, not impact, but perhaps the biggest change?
I don't know if it's going to be a change, but I think it's going to be how should I say it? An improvement of emotion in the room, bringing back Mike Solari. When I say bringing back, if you remember, he was an assistant offensive line coach, special teams coach back in 1987, 88. That's how long he's been in the league. But coming back into the offensive line room, he's more fiery. I think Martin, Zach Martin said it best. He said he's going to bring an edge to the room. And I think that's maybe something more emotional than maybe Joe Philbin had with the room. And not to say that he did a bad job or anything, but I think they were looking for someone to, just kind of be, real old school in there. And I'm looking forward to see what happens there with an offensive line that he's, they're going to have to juggle and see how it's going to play out going forward at this point, not knowing when Terrence Steele is going to be ready after his ACL surgery, not knowing if Tyron Smith can play at the level at left tackle that we're used to seeing him play at, and then use the flexibility of Tyler Smith between guard and tackle to see how all that goes, how they can coordinate all that. And not to mention bringing along some young guys that they're going to need in backup situations that really haven't had a chance to play in the league so far. So, I'm looking forward to see what Solari can do with that offensive line.
Can you go into the year hoping, or can you go into the year knowing that Tyron Smith's going to play most of the games?
Yeah, I'm not even. It's not even playing most of the games, David. It's playing at what level can he still play at? Because I'll tell you what, I'll take Tyron Smith playing at the level he's played at previously in his career for 13 games over somebody else that maybe I don't know how well they're going to play at guard. Because if he can play left tackle and Tyler Smith can play guard and Terrence Steele is ready to go, that's a pretty good combination of 5 guys on the offensive line. So I think the key thing is not so much if he's going to miss some time, but what level is he capable of playing? Because if you think about it, he missed all of last season, got back at the end. But when you miss that much time, how do you get back into the swing of things to start those games he did at a position he hadn't played at since, 2012, playing right tackle? So, again, when those last couple days of the mini camp, they did have him at left tackle. But we can't tell anything in mini camp. They're going through the motions. It's basically walk through speed. There's no contact. So training camp's going to be real interesting to see just where he's at and where they decide to try it at first to see his level of play, if he can still play at that level.
So Terrence Steele was a lot better. Am I right that when he had to take over, he was better than they thought that he would be? And then he was at right tackle, correct?
Terrence Steele played right tackle, correct.
Right. Okay, because they had, I don't even remember now who it was, that is it the guy that moved the sign with Cincinnati? Am I right? Is that this timeline with that? What am I thinking here?
Well, Terrence Steele.
Lyle Collins. I don't know if he was.
Yeah, he took over for Lyle Collins.
Okay.
And I mean, truth be known, because remember, Collins got hurt and Steele had to play, and then Collins came back and I think he got hurt again. Going into last year, the year before, he was one of their best offensive linemen, especially. And Zach Martin basically came out and said it. He was our best run blocker. And he was playing at a pretty high level last year until he suffered the torn ACL the beginning of December. I mean, no one knew who he was. We're talking, an undrafted free agent. But he was playing at a Pro Bowl level at right tackle. I'll guarantee you that. And they significantly missed him, because their run production went down significantly from what it was when he was playing right tackle to what it ended up when he wasn't there. And not so much a knock on Tyron Smith, since he didn't play that position in so long. And right and left, I understand it's a little more, there's a difference. But you can get out there after you rehab and practice, but if you're not playing, it's hard to really, and when you're out that long, get back into it, right? So I think they significantly missed him. I think he was playing at a high level. And, truth be known, they would like to sign him to, he's playing on a restricted free agent deal 1 year. They would like to sign him probably to a 3-year deal if he would want to do that. And I think the fear is if they don't, and he plays at the level they think he's capable of playing, he might price himself right out of the Star.
Really?
I just think that they are somewhat worried about that. If he has a big year, how many big contracts can you have on the offensive line? But if they can sign him now, say, okay, we'll give you a 3-year deal and we'll give you the money that you're going to make as a restricted free agent, we'll give that to you up front as a signing bonus, a $2 million signing bonus. So I think that's the way they're approaching it right now.
So to ask you what is the biggest question on this team would be silly, because every team, even the best, have questions. But is there something that through the draft, through free agency, or through trades that you feel like that's still not like good, like filled or deep?
Okay, so this is an easy out, right?
Kicker?
Yeah. I hate doing that.
I've known
right?
you. I've
Because,
known you for 30 years, and I saw that coming. Yeah.
I mean, it's the biggest unknown they have right now, right?
Mhm.
Give me a position you think you're worried about, and I probably can give you somewhat of an alternative. I mean, that they can fill or do there that you would get to the end of the year and you wouldn't say, well, you know what? If they had that position fixed, they would have gone to the Super Bowl. I just think they've done a nice job of filling in the spots where they needed to fill in. And now the question is kicker. And we saw, and the Cowboys are spoiled because Brett Maher, I mean, he's making 90-some% of his field goals during the season.
Mm-hmm.
And guys that are available right now, we're not kicking at that level. But my understanding is when he went to Denver for the workout, it wasn't a real good workout. So, I was thinking, well, maybe they bring him back and let him compete. But Denver went a different direction. So that's one of the things that I think we're going to be looking at in training camp. And I even mentioned it to John Fossil. I said, well, I guess we're back to charting practice field goal attempts during training camp. Like, okay, distance, did he make it? Did he miss it? Because, the way Maher ended up kicking after he took over the job, there was no sense keeping an eye on him. But before that, we were charting everything. And they had, the young kicker, and they had a couple guys come in for workouts. And then once Maher, kind of established himself, that they were fine. And if you think about it, David, if they didn't make the playoffs and he never had to kick at Tampa Bay in that playoff game, he probably would have got signed to a 3-year, $9 million deal for the season he had. But it all went downhill when he missed the 4 extra points in the playoff game against Tampa Bay on a really shoddy field. And I did say shoddy, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, I mean, he was not only pretty much automatic, but he has great distance as far as a threat, and his very clutch. So last thing, and if you don't mind, somewhat quickly, but Mickey Spagnola with us, DallasCowboys.com. I was listening to a segment from earlier today, and they were talking about one of the strengths that you hear about Dak. And a lot of times when you're a fighter, when you're like not very talented, they always say, well, he plays hard. But one of the things about Dak that they were debating was this a compliment, and at the quarterback position especially, maybe than any position in sports, was what was more important, the arm strength, whatever, or the fact that you're a legitimate and true leader. Is Dak a leader in that level, and is that something that people would say rather than something about what he can do as a player?
Yeah, I think that the leadership thing is huge. Now, if you don't have the talent and you're a great leader, it ain't going to work, right?
Mm-hmm. Nope.
But I think one of his great strengths is guys will follow him to the end of the locker room, right? He has them. If you look at some of the things that have been going on in the off season, when it's time to work in the backyard, those guys show up. If he says, okay, we're going to have a little throwing session, and everybody shows up. And that just tells you the attention he has to some of the other guys. And you almost have to be in the locker room to see it, because it's not one of these rah-rah things. It's just the way he commands himself and how he relates to so many different people, both sides of the locker room, offense, defense, special teams. And when he's saying something, they're following him. I guarantee you. So the leadership part is not a problem. And maybe the best thing he does is he doesn't blame anybody else. And he could have very well unloaded on a bunch of guys last year for running bad routes, for dropping passes that ended up being his interceptions when it was really pretty unfair. And he's done that. And that's what quarterbacks have to do, David. We know that. They got to take the blame. That's why they get paid the big bucks. And I know you said quickly, but a couple years ago, he was taking all the blame for these interceptions, and they weren't his. It was drop passes, bad routes. And he got done with his interview, and I listened to it for about as long as I could stand. And he walked off, and I was looking at him. He goes, "What are you looking at?" I said, "I'm looking for stab wounds." He goes, "What do you mean?" I said, "You keep falling on your sword." And he just smiled and said, "I'm the quarterback."
Yeah. He's not going to. If he ever gets mad or angry or pissed off enough, it would be whoa. That doesn't mean he can't get frustrated, but he's not going to rock the boat. He's not that kind of guy. Mickey, thank you so much. We appreciate it. Enjoy the last few days of the week and enjoy the weekend. We'll talk to you again next week and see you soon.
Okay, David. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good being
you too.
with you.
Yes, sir. Mickey Spagnola, Thursdays at 4:25 with us on 365 Sports. Mike Craven, who's the senior writer for Dave Campbell's Texas Football Magazine. It is heavily college and high school football. His thoughts about the best and talented rosters in the state of Texas when it comes to college football, and a few other things as well. He'll join us at 5:10. But coming up next, Craig Smoak, Off the Radar. This is 365 Sports. Stonewood Dental got a text yesterday reminding me of my appointment that's not until July the 6th, just to kind of make sure I don't screw something up and get something else planned or take some time off. July the 6th. David, you have an appointment. Make sure you confirm. And I'll get 2 or 3 more of those until July the 6th shows up. I have the back right molar, lower jaw, that was fixed by Dr. Steve Childress when I bit into a mint, and I kind of could feel like, man, something just came loose. Part of a tooth. He fixed it. I need to go get it fixed for good. And then one of the things that I know is if something happens, call your dentist. Just call him. And even if you feel like you've fallen behind on the maintenance of what you should do every day, obviously, my God, I hope you brush your teeth multiple times, floss, use those little sticks that kind of help get your gums clean. I used to not do the stuff between the gums, and eventually you have bad gums. And I've overcome that. But just take care of your teeth. Take care of your dental hygiene. And if you do or don't, Dr. Steve Childress in Stonewood Dental is as good as you can go, a place to get what you need done. Stonewood Dental in Robinson, Texas.
TFNB, your bank for life, is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB, your bank for life. Member FDIC.
Three Nations Brewing Company has 16 different beers on draft with a new beer every Friday. It also offers 2 air-conditioned tap rooms, a large indoor beer hall, a second-floor mezzanine offering a great overview of the brewing company and equipment and patio where you can relax under the shade. Plus, you can now experience the new Three Nations Beer Garden Grill on our shaded patio. Grab a cold beer and enjoy a bite from our freshly prepared and delicious menu. Street tacos, quesadillas, freshly cooked burgers and dogs, and veggie burgers too. Nachos and so much more, all prepared and cooked on site. So come visit the award-winning Three Nations Brewing Company on East Vandergrift off I-35 in Carrollton.
One size fits all. That may be all right for an adjustable belt or cheap sunglasses. When it comes to your financial needs, no one wants a one-size-fits-all strategy. Cam Heathcott, your Edward Jones financial advisor, knows that his most important goals are yours. That's why we take the time to understand your needs. Knowing you, that's how Edward Jones makes sense of investing. Cam Heathcott in Conroe at 936-756-7717. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Cars priced right, day and night. At Richard Car in Texas. Trucks built for you, red, white, and blue. At Richard Car in Texas. Cars that zoom with lots of room. At Richard Car in Texas. Count on us, a dealer to trust. At Richard
Boozers is the wedding ring store and more. If you're ready to get engaged or already married and want to upgrade your wife's ring for a special anniversary, Boozers is the place to go. With the largest selection of premier quality diamond engagement rings and wedding rings in Central Texas. They have 7 cases with over 300 styles of rings from top designers like Natalie Kay. Choose from yellow, white, or rose gold, plus beautiful top quality loose diamonds. With an in-house jeweler, they can also custom make anything you want. Bring in a picture or drawing and let Boozers create your one-of-a-kind pendant or ring. They can even use some of your old gold and diamond jewelry to create something new. At Boozers, you'll find a great selection of quality timepieces, and Boozers is the place for expert watch maintenance and repairs too. They specialize in expert Rolex watch repair for fine jewelry, watches, custom work, and more. Go to Boozers on Valley Mills and Lake Air Drive in Waco.
Boozers, the wedding ring store and more.
Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
This is Craig Smoak's Off the Radar, presented by Alliance Bank. They take pride in making banking easy. AllianceBankTexas.com.
All right, welcome into Off the Radar here on 365 Sports. It's a Thursday at around 4:45. Actually, maybe the one time ever that we'll hit this exactly at 4:45. Like it was 4:45:00 when I started talking. Don't know that'll ever happen again.
I'm waiting for you to say something like that. You're right, because we usually let that thing linger, and next thing you know, we move it into the 5. And when I schedule now guests for 5 o'clock on Tuesdays or Thursdays, I kind of tell them 5:10.
Yeah, but I mean, literally 4:45:00 is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like right on the dot is when I started talking. So yeah, that's probably not going to happen very often, if ever again. But here we go. A few stories from around the world of sports is what we do twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays around this time. Just take a look at a grab bag, as I like to call it, of just what's going on outside of our normal discussions. And as I always mention, it can include anything from any walk of sports. And even though we talk 90% college football, 9% Cowboys, or whatever it is, I'm still going to have some college football from time to time. And that's where I want to start off here. And this will be of interest to you as well, Garrett, along with Smokey here. But do you see the news about Les Miles that coincides with the ruling on LSU's penalties as far as the NCAA investigation goes?
No, I just mentioned Will Wade. I did not mention all the other stuff.
Yeah, all the other stuff. Yeah, there were other things as well. But here's the deal with LSU. The NCAA vacated LSU's football victories from 2012, or vacated their football victories from 2012 through 2015 due to what was $180,000 in improper benefits given to former player Vidal Alexander, who was a guard. You remember him, Garrett?
Vaguely.
Well, he was a guard.
You wrote the check.
Yeah. He wrote the check, and he's sitting here with us. Like, I don't know. That's big bankroll type of stuff there. He would be the most hidden, what do you call it, bagman in history here just behind the scenes with us. But no, LSU guard Vidal Alexander, his family, got $180,000 in improper benefits from LSU from former head of the Our Lady of the Lake Foundation, John Paul Funes, and hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. Per the NCAA investigation, he offered jobs to Alexander's parents, also paid Alexander's father for work that he did not actually perform, and Alexander's father got payments for almost 5 years, despite the fact that he only worked 5 events. And this is per WBRZ. It gets into the details of, what happened and how it happened and all of that, how they were introduced, but the basic part that you need to know with this story is that Alexander ended up playing in 50 games. LSU went 37-13 in those games. So with the NCAA deciding to rule him ineligible retroactively due to improper benefits, that vacates what?
37 wins.
37 wins. And why does that matter? Well, that matters because there is a certain threshold to be eligible for the College Football Hall of Fame as far as your winning percentage goes.
With Les Miles.
With Les Miles, who was the head coach during all of this. So what does that mean, vacating those 37 wins? It means Les Miles is no longer eligible for the College Football Hall of Fame because that would drop his record to 108 and 73 as opposed to 145 and 73. So his career winning percentage goes from 665 to 597. And to be eligible for Hall of Fame, a coach must have a 600 winning percentage. So .003 now under the threshold for being eligible for the College Football Hall of Fame. And he has not coached now for going on 3 years, so he would be about eligible the 3-year period that follows your retirement or the last time that you coached when you would be considered selected. Apparently he's no longer eligible for the College Football Hall of Fame based on that ruling from the NCAA. And Garrett's just like, what? But, that seems a little absurd, but it's part of the deal, and they do have that threshold. So anyways, I came across that. I thought that was very interesting and maybe a side effect that – and I saw actually after I'd gotten to Mandel had a thing on it, I think, over on The Athletic where he mentioned it also. But – won the title in 2007, 12 years with LSU, but no longer eligible for the College Football Hall of Fame based on NCAA's punishments today.
That's interesting. I mean, he was a tricky character, the Mad Hatter was. So
yes,
I've kind of have conflicted feelings on him. But
do you now?
Yeah,
I do.
You don't. He won a national title.
That's all that matters. I'm cool with that. I'll take that, Natty.
Yeah, you don't really care if he's a College Football Hall of Fame. I mean, I'm totally with you there.
So, less than the Mad Hatter, Oklahoma State, LSU, and then, of course, he was run out of Kansas, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm all against vacating wins. They happened.
Yeah.
I'm against Reggie Bush having to return the Heisman Trophy. Put an asterisk next to him.
Right.
I just think vacating wins is, do the teams they beat get wins? No. So now you imbalance wins and losses. So if you lost 5 times during that period or 3 times, you still lost. You still, I would think you still get losses, but you don't get wins. Maybe you don't get losses, but you don't get wins. So if you're going to vacate 37, you should give them to somebody else, or maybe they just disappear completely. That's what.
And that's also tricky though, because that is part of the punishment though. I mean, so what? He's just going to roll on into the College Football Hall of Fame, and we just act like he didn't have a couple of scandals that exited him on the way out, and we just worry about his that's just ignoring the bad parts to celebrate the good parts. So I definitely agree with most of where you're coming from, but I also don't think that you just shouldn't be. I mean, how do you hurt people in this situation if you're trying to punish them? I mean, in theory, monetarily, you'd have to go $10 million fine for them to even flinch in most cases, especially an LSU. But I also understand that no, they won those games, but then they technically won that game with an ineligible player. So it's a weird deal. And I want to clarify on the timing of this because the timing is very interesting. So he last coached in 2021. To be eligible for the Hall, you can be considered 3 years after retirement, so he'd be coming right up on that, or at 70 years old, well, he's 69. So he's in both cases, he's right there on this starting to be his eligibility. But as it stands now with that ruling and the vacating of those wins, he's no longer eligible. So really interesting side effect that maybe you didn't think about when you first saw the punishments coming down.
It doesn't matter, but they have 833 all-time wins, so they now drop below 800 and start all over again, right? They'll be just below 800, and this year they'll win 10 or 12 games.
LSU, yeah. Where is there a fully updated? That's something to talk about later on, actually. The all-time wins, because I know that's fluctuated in recent years.
Yeah, especially with my favorite team.
Yeah, I know at one point Nebraska
you could pluck these off the top 10 without thinking.
Right. But I know that Oklahoma and Texas were sort of jostling
OU and
there.
Texas is up 2.
See, that was a lot more.
But Oklahoma has 52 losses less. 20 ties more.
Yeah. See, that thing
so
can be a fun debate.
So the winning percentage is better, but it's very close. Michigan has a very large lead at the top.
Yeah. You've been around longer in a lot of cases. That helps too. But I think that has I think we're at a point now where, like, when it used to be like Princeton was in the top 10, or, you know, like those years have all passed by now to where you're seeing more of the modern all start to kind of settle into place.
Princeton is 15th still.
Yeah. All right, so that's an interesting thing coming out of Baton Rouge today. Meanwhile, I'll stick with one other college note. Deion Sanders, you know, there's been a lot of talk about his health. He had to have a couple of toes amputated just a couple of years ago due to a long history with blood clots, and sounds like a nightmare to have to deal with. Well, he's going to undergo surgery on Friday tomorrow morning to address a couple more blood clots in his legs. And I don't know how many people out there subscribe to Shedeur Sanders' YouTube channel where they put a lot of the stuff, but he had a video on there, and they visited with the doctors and, you know, put a lot of the information out there. I think there was a lot of write-ups, like, right after that as far as, like, oh, my God, he's got blood clots. He might lose a leg and all of that. One of them is in his right leg. One's in his left leg. And he said at the time that he'll have a procedure to address those clots and restore proper blood flow in both legs. So, yeah, he had his left big toe and second toe amputated back in 2021 while he was still with Jackson State. He's had surgery, according to Yahoo, to correct a dislocated toe and nerve issues, but there were complications, and part of the complications was blood clotting and circulation issues. So, just it sounds like a pain to deal with, and I don't say that lightly because obviously you're talking about amputation and things like that, and he's already been through some of that, but he is going to have surgery on Friday, so I hope that goes well for Prime, man. That's nightmare fuel stuff, and I can't even imagine.
Yeah, I had the very tip of a finger, which luckily was just the very tip of a finger. That can grow back pretty much, but to lose part of a limb, which is part of your toe. I remember when he was playing, and of course he was a diva, but he was the best that he did. And Randy Galloway, when he was doing his talk show, I think this was on WBAP at the time, he called him nine-toed because he started to miss games because of his toe injury. It's so sick now because
he'd get a lot of flack for that nowadays.
Yeah, no, he probably would still call him that. But
probably Galloway probably would. Yeah. But there is good news with all of this. If you've been following along with the blogs and you understand this, so there was that fear that was out there of like, man, he might have to have more amputations. He might have to have like lower leg and all of that kind of a deal. But he most recently updated everybody to say that the 2 of the 3 remaining toes on his left foot are hammer toes, which means there's an abnormal bend to the middle joint of the toe. And the doctors, what they're going to do is they're going to straighten those out. But to do so, they got to have proper blood flow. So, and that also goes on top of the fact that he's also got a dislocated foot. So he's just, I mean, you think of like Prime and the money and all that, but there is another side to the NFL career and health issues and all of that. And he is example A, clearly, and that's probably a good thing, actually, to kind of let people know that. But the surgery tomorrow is going to address the clots, and then once those are cleared up and taken care of, then he can have the additional procedures to then straighten out that left foot. So a lot of that's been documented, as I said, but good luck to Deion Sanders. Good news that hopefully nothing else has to be amputated. Hopefully he can get the flow, recovered, and he can kind of get back to somewhat normal, but that'll take place tomorrow. So if you have it in you, just some best wishes for Deion Sanders to hopefully rid himself of a lot of what's been ailing him. All right, later on, elsewhere going on this evening, you got a couple of good sports events. You've got the NBA draft, and you've also got the College World Series. And when it comes to the NBA draft, that will begin at 7 p.m. Central Time on ABC and ESPN. It's widely expected that Victor Wembanyama will be the first overall pick to the San Antonio Spurs, but you got Charlotte at the number 2 spot. Portland, Houston, and Detroit will round out the top 5. Orlando, Indiana, Washington, Utah, and then the Dallas Mavericks round out the top 10. Orlando, OKC, Toronto, and New Orleans. That finishes out the rest of the 14 lottery picks. Starting with San Antonio, New Orleans will have the final lottery pick, and waiting to see if Keontae George can find himself in there. It doesn't look likely, but it is worth noting that if somehow he can find himself, the Baylor freshman star, in that top 14, he'd be the 3rd lottery pick in a row for Scott Drew after having Davion Mitchell and then Jeremy Sohan the last couple of years. So I think that would be a pretty impressive feat for...
You forget about Sohan, and there's no reason... You wish he would have played more than a year at Baylor because he was so good. But, yeah, in that one year they had Mitchell, Butler was drafted,
but he was
2,
later.
But he was later. Yeah.
And speaking of Jeremy Sohan, I'm not sure if you saw this or not. I know that Jack retweeted it earlier. I'd seen it last night, but he's been all over the place as far as being like an ambassador interview, behind-the-scenes guy for the NBA during the whole draft build-up. He's been running around interviewing players and
great personality.
Yeah, he seems like he's made for the media or made for social media or whatever. Like if NBA TV wants to hire him, like absolutely could see that. He was playing around with Victor Wembanyama at one point, and they were talking about how they'd played previously, and Wembanyama was talking trash because his team beat Sohan's team in a close game, and you could just tell they were having a lot of fun. So, yeah, Jeremy Sohan, I think he's a guy sort of like RG3's career on the field got cut short, but he's been a great ambassador beyond that for Baylor. I think Jeremy Sohan's got all of the makings of that as well, but hopefully his career on the court lasts a bit longer than RG3 was able to play. But, yeah, he's been all over the place if you're interested in seeing some of the behind the scenes and just you like him as a personality. But the NBA draft later on tonight, and there will absolutely be some Big 12 flavor regardless of where Keontae George lands. Lots of players from all over the league. Meanwhile, the College World Series continues on, and we know that Florida is into the championship game, but now we await to see who they will be playing. And last night you had Wake Forest and LSU go at it. And Garrett, have to get your thoughts on what you were able to see as far as that 5-2 Tigers victory, because Wake Forest has been the team everybody's like they're clearly they're the best team and all this and that, but LSU's pretty damn good, man, and that was a big win last night over number 1 Wake Forest.
It really was. I was kind of nervous. Obviously, we mentioned this last week about this matchup with Wake Forest, but they opened it up in the third inning there. Cade Bilodeau came away with that big home run, and LSU just kind of put them to bed. I was kind of interesting to see the bullpen action that was going back and forth. I think Wake Forest, I was expecting to be a little better out of the bullpen than they were, but it just didn't happen. But it's one of those situations like going back to game 1, man, like LSU could have easily swept this because it took a miraculous play throwing Trey Morgan out at home and then the hit to drive the winning run in the 9th for Wake Forest, man. But tonight you're going to see arguably the best pitchers going at it.
Best pitcher in college baseball history.
I was going to get to that.
Just cold.
Okay, because go ahead. You bring that up, and then I'm going to give you a conversation I had with a guy I played golf with today.
So it's going to be Skeens versus Louder on the mound for LSU and Wake Forest. And when you look at had LSU and Skeens 1.81 ERA, a .78 WHIP, 15-3 record. He's the second overall projected pick. Louder over on the mound for Wake Forest, a 1.99 ERA, a .96 WHIP, 18-0 on the year, and projected to be the number 11th overall pick. So you got in Skeens, you got just a dude, and the number 2 overall pick, 15-3, ridiculous ERAs and whips for both guys. But yeah, 2 top 10 type picks with ridiculously nasty stuff and great numbers, and it should be a fun little duel.
So Kevin Van Zyl, he's from Crawford. He's a hell of a golfer, but his son played at Mississippi State, played with Hunter Renfroe and a few others. But he was there today on the range. We're getting ready to play, and he brought up game 3 tonight, or the elimination game tonight, and he said, "You're going to see tonight the greatest pitcher in college baseball history."
Paul freaking Skeens, that he's saying?
Yeah. And that he's also like 2 strikeouts away from breaking Ben McDonald's record for strikeouts, I think, in a career, and he should shatter that tonight, and then they might even have maybe pitches one more time if they get to the best of 3. But I didn't know that. I knew he was good. Wake Forest has 3 just really good pitchers. So this is going to be a fun one. I can't wait to get off the air, go home, watch it a little bit, and enjoy.
Yeah, and they kind of said, Jay Johnson kind of set this up where there's some thoughts that he might not be available, but he played it to try and make him available, and it worked out. So you're going to see Skeens out there. And yeah, arguably the best college player in America, certainly arguably the best pitcher in America, or arguably you can take that however you want it to. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be the cream of the crop out there tonight with Skeens versus Louder, LSU versus Wake Forest, and somebody will go home after tonight. So Wake and LSU will get underway at 6 o'clock from Omaha, Nebraska, and that will be on ESPN2 because, of course, you've got the NBA draft that will be ongoing over on ESPN and ABC. So a lot going on for the Disney networks later tonight and just in sports in general. And let's see here. I think I've got a couple more notes, and we'll roll out here. U.S. Open, most watched in 4 years.
There's a reason.
What's the reason?
Prime time.
Prime time.
First of all, it was really kind
West
of a
Coast.
boring final round because Rory just never made a run and Ricky fell out pretty quickly. There was a couple others, but Scheffler couldn't make a run. And it's, you think about Wyndham Clark, is not a big name, but it's the U.S. Open, but prime time, there's no question it vaults the ratings just like it would in a football game.
Yeah, there is that caveat to it. Most watched in 4 years, averaged 3.4 million across the various NBC platforms, up over 25% from last year's event at the Country Club in Boston, and up 9% from Torrey Pines a couple years prior, so on and so forth. But there is that West Coast element here, so it paid off for them regardless of how captivating the race was or the winner was and all of that. Good news for golf as far as getting the best numbers they've had for the U.S. Open in 4 years. And on that little golf note, Rory McIlroy, did you see that? Hit a hole-in-one at the Travelers Championship.
No, I saw his score, and I didn't know if he was done or not. I just glanced at it. He was like 1 or 2 over. But
First career ace.
Wow.
On the PGA Tour for Rory McIlroy. Hit it in the first round of the Travelers Championship going on in Connecticut. Came from 214 yards out, par 3, 8th hole. Hit it with a 5-iron. And, got himself his first career hole-in-one on the PGA Tour. So just connecting that with the 2 golf stories there. And you know what? I think I'm going to leave it there. I think that's good enough for now. There's a few things that are off the radar.
Well done, Craig. Thank you very much. I did not know how he finished, but today Adam Scott 9 under. And still on the course is there at, the Travelers, is that right?
Yeah.
Which is in Connecticut. Some big names. Scheffler, 7 under. But Cantley's at 5 under. So there are some pretty big names. But I did not see Rory. I thought at one point he was like 2 over par. Hovland's 3 under. Looking for Rory. Not sure how he finished.
He's tied for 44th, 2
there you
under.
go. At 2 under par in a big group along with some
so if he had a hole-in-one and
that's
didn't make
that's 2
big
under
dent.
in 1 hole.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably because he was struggling. He was like 2 over par. So there you go. Wyndham Clark 2 under and a massive group at 2 under par. A lot of people are going low. All right, Craig, thank you so much. Appreciate it. When we come back, Mike Craven, he's the senior writer for Dave Campbell's Texas Football Magazine. It's the one with Sonny Dykes that's on the cover, or who is on the cover, and it is loaded with college and high school football. It's like the Bible in Texas. Mike Craven is next, and this is 365 Sports.
Richard Carr, Buick GMC Cadillac, they are the people that you can count on. If you watch this show enough, you know that I tell you about them every day, and I'm glad to do so. It's not a problem because I've been over to the dealership more than one occasion, had my car fixed up more than one occasion, had them get it back to me in pristine condition on more than one occasion, and when I need to get it fixed up again, hopefully not in the very near future, that will be the place that I go to get my car worked on when it needs it, even though I didn't buy it from them originally. But now what their customer service has done for me is let me know that if a time comes, hopefully also not in the near future, where I do need to change out vehicles, I know that there are people that I can count on over at Richard Carr Motors. And right now they're celebrating their 24th anniversary sales event. That means big savings on pre-owned cars, big savings on pre-owned trucks and SUVs, special savings in particular on GMC Sierra and Buick Envision SUVs, and there are a lot of Sierras on the lot right now for qualified buyers, where you can save $3,000 on the 2023 GMC Sierra SLT or SLE 1500 models. You can also get 2.9% financing on new 2023 GMC Sierra trucks in general. If you're looking at SUVs, the Buick lineup, the Envisions, the Enclaves, the Encores, all of them have a luxury ride capability, but also don't come with the luxury price tag, which is kind of nice. You get the benefit of a smooth and quiet ride and all the bells and whistles, but you don't feel like you're paying for, insane things. No, just keeping the car modern, keeping it up to date, and keeping you feeling comfortable. Right now, qualified buyers can get low financing and save $2,500 on Buick Enclave premiums. You can save $3,500 on Buick Enclave Avenires, but they've got more options that you can check out by going to the website, richardcar.com, or going over and seeing them in person. They'd be glad to welcome you in and talk to you about their special financing, the various percentages, and the money that you can be saved. They've also got a lot, speaking of saving money, of pre-owned cars and trucks, many of them under $20,000. They're affordable, thoroughly inspected, ready to finance for almost any credit rating. Quality vehicles, pre-owned, ready to drive today. And as I mentioned at the top, great customer service, whether you're buying a car or not. If you didn't buy your car from them like me, you can still get over there, get your oil changed, get your tires worked on, whatever the case may be. Their award-winning service department is standing by to keep you on the road today. You can go see their service specials and set an appointment on richardcar.com. For 24 years in Central Texas, they built a reputation as the people you can count on for all of your automotive needs, whether it's buying new, buying pre-owned, or just getting your car taken care of. Richard Carr, run by proud Central Texans. Check them out today by logging on to richardcar.com. Call them now or go see them now off Highway 6 at the Imperial exit.
After my first car accident, I feared the biggest damage would be to my wallet. I expected a mountain of bills and a long, drawn-out process. But my Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent was there when I needed her and helped me get back on my feet and in my car in no time. Instead of a hassle, I got reassurance and a quick recovery.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
You want to know why Stonewood Dental is so successful? Listen to what happy customers have to say.
It's pleasant. It's different than any other dentist office. I really feel like they care. And it's not that you're here for 2 hours waiting on someone to take care of you. It's quick and easy, and I bring my kids, and my kids love being here too. They really love the treasure box. Staff is really nice and accommodating, real friendly. You feel more like home. It's not sterile looking. Everybody has their own personalized rooms with decorations and decor, and they'll even have a blanket for you when it's cold. I've recommended people to actually come here, and they are patients now. I really love it here. It feels like family.
Learn more, stonewood-dental.com.
Shorty's Pizza Shack at 12th and Bagby is a homegrown, locally owned pizza place that's out of this world. Everything from the dough, the sauce, the sausage topping is made fresh in-house. Not to mention the amazing pizza pillows, the chicken wings are to die for. Try the Sikkim sauce, chili cheese fries or tots, plus great specials on food and drink every single day. Shorty's is also the perfect spot to watch the game with your friends. Shorty's Pizza Shack at 12th and Bagby. Tell them Paul sent you by.
Did you know that 1 out of every 4 men have symptomatic low levels of testosterone and don't even know it? And if you think you're too young to worry about it, guess again. Low T levels can make you feel tired and grumpy, raise your cholesterol, and cause weight gain. Petty Clinic Low T can set up same-day blood screening and results. So if you're tired of being tired, call or go online at pettycliniclowt.com. It's a private clinic with an atmosphere catering to men. Affordable, only $165 a month, including lab work, office consultation, testosterone injections, and follow-up visits, compared to $300 or more a month in Dallas or Austin, and you don't have to drive 90 miles one way or the other and fight the traffic. Petty Clinic Low T has board-certified physician consultations and will provide the best form of brand-strength testosterone. Contact Petty Clinic Low T for increased energy, improvement in sexual desire and performance, mood, concentration, even a decrease in body and belly fat. Just off Highway 84 and Old Hewitt Drive in Woodway, pettycliniclowt.com.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at alliancebanktexas.com. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 5 o'clock hour is brought to you by Edward Jones Investments and financial advisor Chuck Verno, who'll navigate you through today's financial climate. Edward Jones, making sense of investing.
Now here's David Smoak and Craig Smoak.
All right, here we go, this 5 o'clock hour. Mike Craven, the senior writer for Dave Campbell's Texas Football Magazine. I put this up. It's got the blue tape on it. It says studio, like it's going to leave here. With Sonny Dykes, of course, on the cover after the year that TCU had. And Mike Craven's the senior writer, wrote quite a bit, a lot of stories and features. And he joins us now. Craig Smoak, David Smoak on 365 Sports. Mike, first of all, I think I knew you when you first got into the business. You've kind of become one of those red-hot prospects that's made it, aren't you?
I'll take it. I mean, sure. I had some bumps in the road there in the middle of my own self-doing and kind of righted the ship. You know, the Austin American Statesman kind of let me revive my career a little bit. Hired me on in 2016 or so, and then Dave Campbell's came calling, and it's been a great job. I got a really cool gig.
Well, no, it really is, and it's such a popular. You know, everyone's heard this. It's the Bible of Texas football, high school and college football. So it's great to have you on the show. So you've written a lot of features. I think one of them was it the talent. Who has the best or most talented rosters among the college teams in Texas?
Yeah, I just put that one out today. You know, it's summer, so we're kind of doing the listicle thing, right? Ranking all the things that we can think of ranking and just trying to kill as much time, get as many clicks before we get to media days when it really gets rocking and rolling again.
So, Mike, Sonny Dykes on the cover. I mean, I feel like you guys probably had some discussions, but that seems about as much of a no-brainer as possible given the year TCU had, given Sonny's Texas ties, and I know you explore all of that. But when you're writing a piece like this, a big feature, can you kind of take us into the process and just kind of how the ball gets rolling? And then obviously, you know, connecting with Sonny and being able to discuss with him, you know, various topics and picking his brain and getting this story off the ground.
Yeah, so when we came to the decision to do Sonny on the cover, which as you mentioned, we kind of, you know, as soon as I was headed towards the Fiesta Bowl, I kind of knew that's where we were going. Just when you looked around the landscape of the state, the only other team kind of in contention that had a really good year was probably UTSA. And, you know, we'd already put Jeff Traylor on the cover the year before. They weren't going to, I'm a road runner, but they weren't going to let me do that 2 years in a row. So, you know, Sonny became the guy. And lucky for me, you know, I've done 2 covers now. And one of them was Jeff Traylor, Joey McGuire, and the next one's been Sonny Dykes. And I don't know if I could pick 3 guys in the state that probably care more about our magazine at that level. You know, nothing against like a Jimbo Fisher, but he's not from here. He doesn't really know the history of the state or whatever those 3 guys do. So he was an open book. You know, he gave me family's phone numbers, talked to his wife, talked to him, talked to his sister, talked to Hal Mummy, and just as many people as I could, Dana Holgerson, just as many people as I could. From his kind of coaching circle, coaching tree, and the guys he came up with, and he was a really open book. He gave me quite a bit of time, a couple of different interviews, and you know, honestly, you know, all these cover stories are 2,500 words, and when you first kind of start thinking about it, you're like, man, that's a long story to write. But then when you kind of do all these interviews, you know, everybody's got an interesting story. If you can go ahead and find it, and 2,500 words becomes really short, really quick, and you leave a lot on the cutting room floor.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you about that. You probably wrote 3 times as long as it was, but just Sonny Dykes, we've had him on this show on 365 Sports when he was even at SMU, and obviously I think 3 or 4 times last year. He's an interesting guy. Seems like somewhat of a laid-back person, but he has fire in that belly, and we've seen that on the sidelines a few times.
what I found interesting doing the story was kind of learning that he rebelled against his father's kind of jovial nature. You know, I kind of grew up hearing Spike Dykes stories as kind of this lovable, big figure, very, jovial and talking and did jokes. And, I think Sonny early in his career kind of rebelled against that and kind of went more Mike Leach, Hal Mummy, reserved, kind of keep it close to the vest, make little quirky things here and there, but not be that kind of guy. And when he failed at Cal, it really seemed like he embraced more of that side of his personality, and you kind of see him more, a little bit energetic on the sidelines. His players love him. And so that's kind of what the story became, is kind of how he took the X's and O's of Mike Leach and Hal Mummy, and then the culture building of his father, Spike Dykes, and combined those two things into success at SMU and then now at TCU.
Looking back, hindsight being 2020, is it bizarre to think he was the head coach at Cal? I mean, in hindsight, I know the guys go all over the country, but he is just so made for where he is right now, and just like a Jeff Traylor, just like a Joey McGuire, like you mentioned.
Yeah, I think that was another act of rebellion, right? Like, he was kind of penciled in as Spike's son, as somebody who had to be in the South, somebody who had to be in Texas, and he was in Ruston, Louisiana at Louisiana Tech and won a conference title, and Cal came calling, and in his words, he kind of thought it'd be cool. His kids were, about to start elementary. He was like, man, I can take them to Berkeley. They can be in great schools. It'll be California. It'll be fun. It'll be different than anything we've ever experienced. And, one of the funny things he told me that didn't make it into the story was, when he was at Louisiana Tech, everybody was rude, but they were nice, right? Like, they would, you'd get a flat tire, they'd see you on the side of the road, and they'd be like, you dummy, how'd you get this flat tire? Move over, let me change it for you. And then he went to Cal, and everybody was nice, but they weren't polite, where they'd be like, oh, man, that stinks, you got a flat tire, and then they'd continue on driving, right? So, he was just kind of a person out of water at Cal. I think now with enough time, we can kind of look back and go, maybe that was more Cal than Sonny. And then another big part of it is when he got fired at Cal, it's because they weren't playing any defense. They were scoring a lot of points. They beat Texas twice. But he didn't know how to play defense. He didn't know how to get balanced. And in 2017, he was an analyst at TCU, under Gary Patterson to try to figure out how you do defense. And I think that really changed him. I think that year, really kind of changed his football philosophy, kind of opened his eyes a little bit to running the ball and playing defense. And I think since then we've seen a different Sonny. It's not the same air raid, score 50 points a game. And so that's another thing about Sonny is he's been adaptable. He hadn't let the failure define him. And a lot of coaches get so stuck in their ways that they don't ever do that.
You wrote that ranking the most talented college football rosters, and obviously I don't know how it couldn't be either Texas or Texas A&M, with all due respect to any of the success TCU's had, what Tech has back, and what Baylor has also done. Was that an easy 1 and 2, and was there much distance between 1 Texas and 2 A&M?
Not much difference between 1 Texas and 2 Texas A&M, but yeah, I think it'd probably be easier to do that in tiers. There's kind of the future SEC tier and just what they're able to do from a blue chip ratio. I think they're both 70% or over. There's a pretty big gap between number 2 and probably number 6, and then another little gap between 7 and 9, right? And then another gap between 10 and 13. And so, what's interesting to me is kind of where the Big 12 pecking order is going to be, and it does feel, like it's going to be a fun thing to watch between Texas Tech, TCU, Baylor. Maybe if Houston gets into that mix with some early success, kind of where the recruiting kind of falls. That's kind of my background before I got this gig, and I always kind of keep one eye on kind of where the talent is migrating towards.
Mike Craven, senior writer, Dave Campbell's Texas Football Magazine, with us on 365 Sports.
So, Mike, safe to say that you're not surprised by just kind of bringing all these different elements together. Joey McGuire, they're a team that's being talked about a lot right now, and for good reason. They built up a lot of momentum and just have a lot of energy behind them. Just your thoughts on just seeing kind of this renaissance going on. You got Sonny back at home leading TCU to a playoff. You got Joey McGuire. You mentioned Jeff Traylor. It seems like a lot of good things in the water right now with Texas football, especially at the college level.
Yeah, I think we kind of, as Texans, we kind of get a little too Texanized sometimes. But I think there's something to be said in this state about having those ties and having that background. Like the THSCA, and I say this with all due respect, is a mafia, right? They run this state at the high school level, and who you get to recruit and how you get in those rooms. And we've seen coaches get fired because they've soured at that level. Tom Herman at Texas, right? A lot of that wasn't on-field success or not success. A lot of that was relationship building behind the scenes, I think you've seen a Sonny Dykes, you've seen a Joey McGuire, you've seen a Jeff Traylor, and their ability to get in those rooms and be with those power brokers and be with those bosses and kind of get, I don't think they send guys their way, but, when a kid's making a decision and you've known one coach for 30 years and you've only known the other coach for 3 months, I think it's natural for the high school head coach to go, hey, I know that guy and I can trust that guy and I know what he's telling me is true. And that goes a long way in the state. And I think coaches from the outside have to play catch up with that.
Mike, as you know, Dave Aranda came in after being a part of that national championship team, 2-7, then 12-2, where they were really good. And then all of a sudden last year they took a step back at 6-7. Your thoughts about how Baylor has handled recruiting? Obviously, Tech has a lot from the staff that was left over when Matt Rule left, and now they're in Lubbock. Some are still around at Baylor. Your thoughts about Dave Aranda and Baylor?
What I've always found fascinating about Dave Aranda is how self-reflective he is in an industry that doesn't have a lot of self-thinkers, right? Or at least ones that aren't going to admit it out loud to media. And when I went and sat down with Dave Aranda for the magazine interview, he was very open about how he didn't want to go into the transfer portal because he thought it was betraying the guys on his roster. And, he learned his lesson. They weren't very good. They lacked leadership. They just didn't replace some of those dudes from the leadership committee and just on the field as well. And, Mike Smith and those guys he's brought in defensively, I think is going to help. And, we spend a lot of time talking about Blake Shapen and the offense at Baylor, but for me, it's the defense. Like when, we can go back and look at the run in 2021 and they weren't outscoring teams, right? I mean, they were playing really low scoring, close games and they were winning with toughness and defense. They got away from that last year. If they can be better defensively, I think they're going to be really good again.
Mike, you talked to, hundreds of coaches, maybe even thousands at this point. Just kind of seeing the people who have revolved in and around here in Waco in the last few years. Dave Aranda is certainly very unique. How unique do you find him in comparison to, the various other coaches at all levels you've talked with over the years?
Dave Aranda is the most unique football mind I've ever been around. He's just, most head coaches, especially once you get like coordinator, head coach, a lot of them are the same type of dude, right? They were a very popular high school kid. They were probably a really good football player, probably never struggled to have a girlfriend or to be the popular kid or have a bunch of friends. I remember the first time I was sitting with Dave Aranda, he told me his nickname as a kid was Fence Post because he just stood there.
Yep.
And that's not normal for a guy leading a program. And so, when I talked to him this year for the magazine, we probably sat down for like 45 minutes. The first 15 minutes was about Indiana Jones. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Kind of like what he learned from the movie and what he liked from it and, not getting caught up in the glitz and glamour of the sword tricks and remembering you got a gun in your pocket and just being that team, right? And then he talked about building bridges between love and truth and how he starts with the love and he knows he needs to get to truth. And that's what he did with the transfer portal. Just stuff like that. They're like, Sark doesn't talk that way. Jimbo doesn't talk that way. And so I find them very interesting, but I'm a nerd who likes writing and philosophy, so I'm right up his alley. I'm a mark for Dave Aranda. I love him because of that.
I've admitted this on the show. The first time I interviewed him was the day he was introduced at Baylor at McLean Stadium, and I enjoyed it. It was more of an introduction. But after that, when I had a chance to sit down with him on one-on-ones, man, I had to always have one or two something different, unique, and I had to kind of study to make sure it was something he might have said before, not really getting him to repeat anything, but knowing what his interest and hobbies might be.
Yeah, and I kind of had that same thing. Like, we kind of get these 30-minute windows, and last year was my first year to go do it. And, I usually kind of text coaches I know. Like, I know Sean Bell pretty well. I know Joey McGuire pretty well and some guys that were on the staff. And so, I was like, hey, what's Aranda into? Like, just to break the ice. Like, what are his interests or whatever? And Joey was like, he likes boxing. He likes fighting and stuff. And so, that was the first question I asked him. I was like, hey, I heard you're into boxing. Who was your favorite boxer growing up? Well, that took up half of my window.
Yeah.
And I still had a lot of football questions. I just thought it was like a conversation starter, but he just, he's just interested. He's just going to talk for a long time. So you almost have to like cut him off sometimes and be like, hey, coach, I'm sorry. I just don't want to take up too much of your time. Like, who's your linebacker going to be? And so it's just different because with most other coaches, they don't want the small talk. They want to talk about their offensive line or the defensive line or the linebacker. And, Aranda would rather talk to you about what book he's read recently. And I find it refreshing, but I can see how it couldn't, it's not everybody's cup of tea, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, ask the right 4 questions that can take up a media session. Just 4 questions, depending on what ones you ask. By the way, who did he say his favorite fighter was?
Pernell Whitaker, which I did not find surprising. A defensive wizard, right?
Mm-hmm.
More of a thinking man's boxer than a big man.
Yeah, not a guy that was known. He knocked some people out because he was elite, but yeah, that's pretty cool. Pernell Whitaker was a heck of a fighter, man. He had great quick hands too. Mike, when you see a team in Texas and you see what UTSA's done with Jeff Traylor, and they have Houston early this year, and they, of course, we just read off something from Max Olson, theathletic.com, about how they were the 95th ranked recruiting class in 2019, and if they redid them, they would be like in the top 20. Your thoughts about what he continues to do, even though he lost the wide receiver to the transfer portal?
Yeah, I mean, first off, I as a former recruiting guy, I would say never pay attention to rankings past about 30, right? I mean, like, there's enough guys to do the Power 5 teams and those, like, big elite teams, and they don't, after that, it's kind of a crapshoot. But, I think what Jeff Traylor's done, and a lot of those guys were Frank Wilson's players. Like, Frank Harris and Steer McCormick, Rashad Wisdom, he inherited those guys. And what I find the most impressive about Jeff Traylor and UTSA right now is they're keeping those dudes there.
Mm-hmm.
Like Frank Harris has stayed at UTSA. Rashad Wisdom stayed at UTSA. Most of until they lost Dakari Franklin this year to Ole Miss, that's the first time that they've had a player leave UTSA for a P5 program. During the portal era, while winning, I think 24 games over the last 2 years, 23 games over the last 2 years. So kids like to play there. They like to play for him. He's still recruiting really well. I'd imagine, and I'm a UTSA grad, so I say this, I'd imagine we're on borrowed time, right? Like, he's going to get a big time job sooner or later, whether it's A&M or Texas or Houston or, whoever opens up next in the state. I'd imagine he's on the very short list to get an interview there.
Yeah, and they've done everything they can. They've tried to upgrade in certain things, but there's still some things that there's just certain things they cannot do, compared to those who have the unlimited budget, unlimited donor money. So I'm going to name a school in Texas. You tell me what first comes to your mind. We'll go over like 5 schools. Dana Holgorsen, Houston.
Trouble. It feels like he was hired to put Houston in the position to win in year one, or at least like do more than just try to get to a bowl game. But when you're around that roster, you kind of look at it, you see how many guys are coming in June. It doesn't feel like, it feels like they're more likely to be 4-8 than 8-4. And for me, going into year, I believe 5 for Holgorsen. That's not where they thought that they would be. And so, it feels like one of those years that they're gonna struggle, take their lumps, and it'll be interesting to see what happens beyond that.
Since I brought up UTSA, a guy that played for Jeff Traylor, who's kind of an up-and-coming young coach, Texas State, and G.J. Kinney.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's a really smart guy. I mean, I think he's an up-and-comer is a great way to put that. He's going to have success at Texas State and probably go, be a coach elsewhere. When I think that's one of the things I like the most about my job is I kind of get to sit in front of these guys and, guess which ones are going to be kind of big and which ones are going to fail in my own head. And, G.J. Kinney, feels like a dude who's going to have a lot of success. What he did at UIW was great. And he's, like you said, a Jeff Traylor protege who kind of carries himself in that same way. He's going to do really well at Texas State.
All right. Rapid fire. Texas. Sarkisian in Texas.
Maturity. I feel like the only thing that can slow down Texas is themselves. And if they can be mature in the quarterback room and as a head coach, I think that they're going to win the Big 12.
Jimbo and A&M.
Ooh, disaster maybe. Like that just feels like trouble waiting to happen. Like, 20-13, the offense is struggling. They're losing to Ole Miss. Like, what happens between him and Bobby Petrino?
TCU, the year after with Sonny Dykes.
I guess I would say step back. I mean, it's inevitable that they're going to take a step back. It's just going to be interesting to see how far of a step back. If they go back to 9-3 or 8-4, I think that's seen as fine. If they drop down to like 6-6, 5-7, I think there's going to be question marks.
Texas Tech, you kind of mentioned Joey earlier, but there's a lot high expectations at 8-5. They won a lot at the end. Shuck is back, and they've kind of built a pretty good roster.
Yeah, I would say hype. I mean, Joey's really good at build it. He knows how to talk to people. He'd be a tremendous politician. Y'all know him well there. I mean, he's got a lot of momentum. They're talking about Micah Hudson maybe committing to Texas Tech. And so, the momentum and the hype is real, and we're going to find out if it can match that on the field for a second straight year.
All right, Dave Aranda coming off 6-7 after 12-2.
Yeah, I mean, roller coaster is the way I've been describing it, right? Like, I don't know what the Baylor program is under Dave Aranda. Is it closer to that 12-2 team? Is it closer to the two losing seasons? I think it's closer to 12-2. I think it's more of an 8-4, 9-3 type program if he can get it figured out. But, I don't know. Y'all would be better off to tell me what happens if this team goes 6-6 or 5-7. So it's just kind of weird we're having these conversations. An off season after. Saying Aranda was like going to go get, like the Oklahoma job or something like that, right? And so it's a very interesting time in Waco for sure.
It'll be fun to watch because I think anytime they seem to be like picked down, they go up. And when you have something to follow it up. I want to mention Rhett Lashley and also SMU.
Yeah, I think they're on the cusp. I think with the American being what it is now, with the best 4 teams, leaving for the Big 12, the best 3 teams leaving for the Big 12. If you look at their schedule, they don't play Tulane or UTSA in the regular season. It feels like they're right on the cusp to win 10 games and win an AAC championship and maybe be the best G5 team in America.
And finally, North Texas. And obviously the first-year head coach there in Eric Morris.
Yeah, I'm excited about watching what North Texas is going to do under Eric Morris. Now you look at Incarnate Word and San Antonio and think of it as a really good FCS program, but it was bad. I mean, it was like Lamar and Beaumont bad job when Eric Morris took that over and turned it around. I think as a head coach, he's been excellent. North Texas has a lot of resources and facilities. I think it's only a matter of time before they get up to UTSA's level, to be honest with you.
Mike, I'm proud of you, man. Great stuff with what you're doing at the magazine for TexasFootball.com, and congratulations on the role you're at. Thank you for your time.
Appreciate y'all guys. See you Big 12 Media Days.
Mike Craven, Dave Campbell's Texas Football Magazine senior writer. It's 5:34. I've got something I want to bring up. It's about the Texas High School Football Hall of Fame, but it's very much college football and even in a way NFL related. I'll tell you the story, and I need your help and feedback. Craig, yours. Garrett will need yours. And this is 365 Sports. The city of Woodway with 7 hotels and a lot of different venues and places to host events. From weddings to rehearsal dinners to symposiums to concerts. It is discoverwoodway.com online. And yes, they'll have that 4th of July parade from 9 until 11, open to the public, and all sorts of great stuff that they have surrounding the actual parade itself. DiscoverWoodway.com. They'll start their concert series here pretty soon. And then on top of that, they just do things for any of the special events. 4th of July, even eventually down the road, Halloween and Christmas and more. We've discussed that many, many times. If you need a place and you're visiting Waco, whether it's for a game, a Baylor athletics event, or you're going to the Magnolia or Silos or Balcones, or just coming to visit because the tourism here has changed dramatically in the last 8 to 10 years, they have hotels if you can't find one in Waco. And Waco has more hotels than you could ever imagine compared to when I arrived in 2010. DiscoverWoodway.com.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
The future's bright, the time is now.
College is what you make it. It's a late night pizza run and all-nighters coding a new project. It's having big dreams and making them a reality. It's a professor who knows your name and your story. It's preparation for your future, your calling, your life. And at Baylor, it's even more. Baylor, where lights shine bright.
Where is the best beef in Texas? Your house. When you order from Texas Beef House. Samantha Duvall is in charge of marketing and also distribution. Memorial Day, right around the corner, 4th of July. What are some of the best opportunities for people if they want to order online and maybe get a bundle when they have those holidays in front of them?
TexasBeefHouse.com. You can order. We've got plenty of family bundles. Probably our most bestseller is our sampler pack. That gives you a variety of our jalapeno and cheese patties, our regular patties, ground beef, our garlic link summer sausage. Right now, all of our family bundles are on sale. It's the best time to buy it. You can buy steaks individually. All of our steaks come 2 to a package. We ship Monday through Wednesday. So make sure you get your orders in early. That way you can get them almost the next day.
The owner, Aaron Duvall, his daughter-in-law, Samantha Duvall, head of marketing and distribution, unleash the flavor of Texas raised Wagyu. From our pasture to your plate, TexasBeefHouse.com. At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be a part of the Waco community. We're a small family business right here in Central Texas, and our goal is to bring down the cost of health care while maintaining high quality. At times like this, the cost of health care has never been more important, and unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. That's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through the difficult time. We offer premium MRIs just like a hospital with state-of-the-art technology and specialists, but you'll pay less. Sometimes thousands of dollars less, whether you're using insurance or not. At Ideal MRI, we accept most insurance and there are no hidden costs, even offering financing if that's needed. Everything included in the price, and you'll not get something as a surprise in the mail later on. If you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. They'll know. You can schedule an appointment safely from home online in minutes at idealmri.com or give us a call, 833-IDEAL-MRI, idealmri.com.
How did Edward Jones become one of the biggest financial service companies in the world? By not acting that way. Financial strategies, one-on-one advice, it's a big difference. And that's why Brad Wilson, your Edward Jones financial advisor, makes sense of investing. Experience the difference for yourself. Brad Wilson, 250 Sharon Drive in Woodway, 254-776-4337. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
It's Jeep season at Allen Samuels in Waco, and the deals are hot. Get a 2023 Jeep Grand Cherokee Laredo with $5,500 in total values, or a 2023 Jeep Gladiator Sport with total values up to $6,000.
This is 365 Sports. Are you a Sikkim 365 super fan? Then try out our premium subscriptions at Sikkim365.com.
All right, this is random, but it's college, high school, it's football related. So I'm on the Texas High School Football Hall of Fame ballot committee, and there are others. Chad Conine from the newspaper, Mike Anderson runs everything. I think Bryce Cherry from the Waco Trib. I know he's a part of every meeting. And then there's Doug Furch, who works at Baylor, former high school coach and former coach at Baylor. So we have these ballots where you have players who played, for example, before the 1960s. And there's 10 names on the ballot. One person gets elected based on a vote, and they get inducted into the Texas High School Football Hall of Fame. They had the banquet back in May. And then you have the 70s, and then the 80s, on and on and on, then the decades. But here is the group for the decade of the 2010s. And it's so good that there's actually discussion to break it into 2010 to 15, 15 or 16 to 20. It's that good. Tell me how you're going to pick from these guys. And it's not what they are in the NFL or what they were in college, but that comes into play. It's who they were as a high school player. Baker Mayfield, Patrick Mahomes, Kyler Murray, maybe the greatest single. Kyler Murray, the greatest quarterback for Myles Garrett.
Well, hold on. I mean, let's kind of take our time here. Patrick Mahomes had a great career at White House, but they never accomplished what Kyler did at Allen overall. And Kyler, just the winning streak. Like I don't think you can.
43
there's not
games in a
better
row.
Candidate possible than Kyler Murray. Like as far as unbeaten, multiple years, state titles, like. I get the names attached, Mayfield and Lake Travis. Like, the problem with Mayfield is, like, he's one of, like, what, 6 Lake Travis quarterbacks that have won a state
Garrett
title.
Gilbert, and then you had somebody, then you had
multiple
Mayfield.
guys. Whereas, with Patrick and Whitehouse, like, that was totally unique, and we didn't quite know at the time. Like, I knew something was weird was going on in Whitehouse. Like, how, where are the recruiters? And then I was gone by the time that his senior year rolled around. He had kind of settled in with Tech, and I don't know, like, how many folks got involved after that, but he was locked into Tech once he, committed to them. But yeah, for a while there, it was like, where, like, is this, like, am I seeing stuff? Is this dude like the freak show, or like, is this normal?
But he never was really, like, highly recruited.
No, but he did all the things he does now.
No,
he was doing that,
yeah.
and it was at the 4A high school level, and it was just like, I knew it was special what I was watching, but I don't think I knew, or anybody knew, like, how special it was. Obviously, he might be the greatest football player of all time when all is said and done.
Yep.
I mean, he's like that kind of trajectory right now. But yeah, anyways, that has to be Kyler. That has to be Kyler for all he accomplished.
Okay, Mahomes was the player of the year in 2013-14, had 4,600 yards passing, 50 touchdowns as a senior, went 12-1.
And I know Allen won multiple state titles as well. So, like, but Kyler, like, the winning streak and all of that, like, you just can't touch that.
43 consecutive wins.
Yeah.
Passed for over 10,000 yards, 117 touchdowns, and also ran for 4,100 yards. And just nuts. And then you have Myles Garrett, who was a monster at Arlington Martin, but he'll get overlooked because of the quarterbacks. Mayfield.
So what is this exactly?
This is going to be, these are the nominations. This would be under the normal rules, the nominations for the decade of the 2010s.
So are we picking, like, one quarterback?
No.
So
the way the rules have been, you have one player from the 70s, one player from the 80s, one player from the 90s. But this decade, not that the 70s didn't have Campbell and Billy Sims and whatever, but not always probably on the same ballot.
So from this list, how many guys get selected?
I'm not one.
So but we're one. Okay, I thought we were doing, like, positions.
No,
and,
we're looking at splitting this up into 10 to 14, 15 to 19. All right, we're not done. Dede Westbrook, who was phenomenal at Cameron Yo, I think he won a couple of state titles, maybe, perhaps. Okay.
No, yeah, he did.
Trayon Smith, who was an all-time great. The question with him, though, is he's not quite eligible because he graduated in 2016, and you have to go 5 years. So he would be on the ballot next year.
The problem also is that he is nowhere near the star that any of those guys you mentioned.
And he won I think it was 2 or 3 state titles in a row. Until of course, he was killed. He drowned. Yeah. James Washington, who I know not much in the NFL, he's now with the Cowboys, was really good at Oklahoma State. At Stanford, won a couple of state titles and was as good a small school player that I think I've ever seen, along with Quan Cosby. Andrew Billings, Quandre Diggs, Mario Edwards Jr. But I think if you go by just raw wins, losses, and stats, Murray wins all of it across the board.
Yeah, I think Kyler Murray is like the poster boy for Texas high school football in a lot of ways. I mean, those others could be that as well, but I just feel like there was nothing like the Kyler Murray recruit. I mean, I know things have been similar, but it was just different. Like, it was just different when he flashed that Texas jersey picture when he was visiting them out of the, like just the world revolved around Kyler Murray and who was going to land him. And then, A&M does, and then we know what happens there, and then he goes to Oklahoma and becomes a Heisman winner and makes the playoff. And there's more of like a legend around him. Does that make sense? Like, there's more of this lore and this legend about him than I think there is with the other guys who are all exceptional at what they did as well. But I just think that if you're talking like Mr. Texas high school football, I think it has to be Kyler Murray. Yeah,
I think I would think so. And I mean, and of course, Allen was on this trajectory at about the same time. But man, so what we're looking at doing is breaking it in 2 different sets of 5 years. Let me see what the chat room's saying as well. And it's hard to, someone said, someone mismanaged him. And you're right. There's no question. I don't know if it got into this yet or not. Yeah. Kim, Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray. Want to make sure I don't lose anything here. Kyler Kyler was an awesome high school football player. He's a hell of a player in college. I can tell you all this: Kyler Murray damn sure isn't a fan here in Phoenix. Yeah, no, that's not going very well.
Yeah,
it's not
won't
going
get your
very
votes.
well.
Yeah,
Kyler Murray, no doubt. Kyler is studying hard. The video games is always going to. Patrick Mahomes, Paxton. Somebody mentioned Mario Edwards. Mario Edwards lost in a playoff game. He was at Denton Ryan. To Midway, they schemed him, and 180-pound left tackle or left guard annoyed him, and he very rarely was a part of anything that he actually ever did.
I think it's fair to say that Patrick Mahomes retroactively deserves a lot more love for what he did at the time, but I also think now that's going to swing too far to the other side where he gets more credit than he probably deserves for that, for those things because of just the megastar that he is now. Does that make sense?
Yep.
He definitely deserved more. You can go search back my tweets from whenever that would have been 2012, and Patrick Mahomes with his 5th touchdown pass of the night to Coleman Patterson or whoever, Jake Parker and those guys.
Yep.
But yeah, he definitely didn't get probably enough love for how freakishly good, because he's doing all the same things he's doing now. He's just doing it in high school, and you're just every Friday you're what? But they also weren't winning every game. They were really good, but they weren't as dominant as the Chiefs are. But yeah, he probably now though everybody's going to say, well, he should have won the Heisman and he should have won, and it's okay, it's easy to say now, but at the time, I think as much as anything, Patrick in his college years was in his high school years is just kind of overlooked a little bit, although by the time his senior year rolled around, he was getting a lot of attention, just probably now not as much as he deserved. And then his college years, that was just a byproduct of Tech not being hot.
They just weren't very good. It was his senior year. He finally beat Baylor the year that Baylor.
No, it was his junior year.
Was junior year, and he finally won the game in Arlington.
Do y'all see the super chat? We have a super chat.
No, I did not. I'm glancing over that. Someone mentioned
from Charlie Casado. It says, "Do you think Kansas is now dominant in the Big 12? Also, what do you think of Colorado State or Air Force joining the P5?"
All right, let's go to thank you for the super chat. We appreciate that. Kansas and Kansas State dominant in the Big 12. As good as Kansas was able to rise out of the ashes of not being good, I think that they will be on a trajectory. I think it'll be methodical. But I don't know about them running the Big 12. Kansas in basketball, yes, that will happen with an occasional Baylor or Texas Tech or whoever it has been. Texas won the Big 12 championship tournament last year. And I'm not forgetting about Jerome Tang at K-State.
If we're talking football, absolutely not. I don't think that they'll be dominant. I think that they'll be right there in the group of everybody else that will jump up from time to time and be a tad bit better than others in various years. I don't know that I'm pegging them to win a Big 12 football title here in the very near future, but give it a couple years and see where we are, and I think that that's entirely possible if you continue to have all the positive momentum that seems to be surrounding Lance Leipold. And I think Jalen Daniels has got to stay healthy this year, obviously, because that completely changed the whole story of last year. I mean, he's still the story of last year and how much of a turnaround they experienced, but that final record wasn't what it should have been because he got hurt, and we'd be talking even more about them than we already are. So yeah, they still got a ways to go there. But in basketball, if that's the question you're asking, well, yeah, I think that's been pretty clear for a while now, even though Baylor, Tech, and others have had their moments, Baylor in particular with the national title. But, yeah, I mean, KU and basketball, it kind of goes without saying.
And, Charlie, thank you very much for the super chat.
Absolutely.
I'm not sure
we
had
all
one.
The question?
Do you think Kansas is now dominant in the Big 12? Basketball, the answer would be absolutely they have been. And also, do you think Colorado State or Air Force joining a Power 5? I don't see that happening. I would personally love a super conference if it ever gets to that point with the military academies, but and you would get ratings too. You'd get eyeballs with Army, Navy, and the Air Force, but I don't see that happening. Colorado State has been a part of that. You see a submarine and there's a doot, and you kind of see something coming at the submarine. And then
bad timing with what the world news is.
I
was thinking that too.
Not the best example.
Okay, so you see you see an F-15 or whatever they are now, whatever they are in the sky, and you got the radar. There's a bogey coming, but there's also one that's a little bit further out. Colorado State, Memphis. We've mentioned this. USF, Boise. They've kind of been on that peripheral. Still, there, But, man, a lot of work to be done, and a lot of realignment would have to happen for that to occur.
Yeah, sad ending to that. But, I mean, I think the assumed ending in so many ways for what happened with those Titanic adventurous explorers, what have you, who all perished, as we found out today. But, yeah, that was just the timing. Thinking of those beeps in the water.
Man, timing.
Right. But, no, I mean, as far as at Air Force, we don't talk about them on this show. After what happened in the bowl game here recently, that was a nightmare for folks who cover Baylor in more ways than what. No, I mean, I got a lot of respect for Air Force and what they do. I don't think, though, that the Big 12 is going to come calling for them, unfortunately. And for Colorado State, I think that would be something, unless Brett Yormarsh got some wacky scheme behind the scenes. It's like multi-tiered and like multiple members are joining and like something where all of a sudden it explodes and there's like 24 teams in the Big 12. Like, barring that, I don't think that they are
and
on
that
the
would
cusp
probably
of,
be the only one where that would happen.
That's like the only way that would happen. Yeah, they're not going to be like member 14 or 16 or even 18. They'd be member like 22, 23, 24 probably. And that's no offense to them. That's just kind of the pecking order and the preferences, I think, of the Big 12. So, no, on both of those. But you never know what could happen in a few years. I mean, there were some that were predicting there would be sort of these seismic shifts that we've seen, but not maybe to the degree that we have seen them here in the last couple of years. So, yeah, maybe down the road, but not in the near future.
Katie Rader does not mean Mahomes, was not the best player by far. Mahomes did what he did with less. No, he had less on defense especially. He was a phenomenal college player. He was a really, really good high school player, and he's been an incredible NFL player. The difference in the NFL, he's surrounded by more. He's winning championships, 3 Super Bowls. He's won 2 of them, MVPs, and he's got what you think are more to come.
Yeah, I'm a part of an award where I think even retroactively, if you look back on it and you could redo it, like, yeah, you'd probably say, like, hey, Patrick Mahomes should have won that, but it's like – you can do that with a lot of things, and really, if you want to do it, like who's the best player in college football, like he should have probably won the Heisman, or at least been in New York for the ceremony. But that's the way it was viewed at the time. Unfortunately, I think that he got really hampered by the overall success of the team, and he tried to, with individual awards, not allow that to filter in. But when you're weighing a guy versus another guy, and the other guy's got a team that's in the college football playoff or playing for a national title, and this other guy's team's not making a bowl game, as good as he might have been, like it's just hard to overlook that, right? And maybe if you'd kind of known why that was and looked into it a bit more, then he would have gotten more of a benefit of the doubt. But, yeah, I think everybody's going to retroactively look at his college career and go, oh, dang, he was way better than we remember. And, man, if he just – and I think most people realize if he had even a lick of help, then, besides Dylan Cantrell, who was his high school teammate, that was another guy that was pretty damn good at White House. But, yeah, they just weren't good as a team, and I think that definitely affected his accolades.
What would have been Mahomes' senior year in college, or his last year in college? Would have been 2016?
Well, his last year in college was when they whooped the mess out of that Baylor staff that was on their way out at AT&T Stadium.
So 16.
Yeah, that would have been –
right.
No, that would have been –
No, it would have been 16.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Rule's first year was 17. The 2016 Heisman Trophy, even in the Southwest, the voting, Lamar Jackson – Deshaun Watson, Baker Mayfield, Dede Westbrook, and then Foreman, the running back. Deontay Foreman from Texas were the ones. In the South, I don't see Mahomes on any of these.
Well,
Again,
there's 3 other Big 12 guys you've already mentioned
so
there.
they probably took away part of the block.
And Foreman had 2,000-plus yards rushing, and Texas was kind of like working their way back up under Charlie or whatever vicinity of where they were at that time. Like they were kind of just – I think trying to figure some things out is probably the best way to put it post-Mac. But, yeah, Foreman had a great year, and he probably got a little bit more love because he wears burnt orange versus, black and red and not making a bowl game Patrick. But, yeah, obviously OU had some influence there too.
All right, man, the chat room, 9 different places that it's all gone, and there's always something where everybody needs to go to the corner and take a deep breath, including sometimes even me. But we love you for being there, and thank you very much. I think we'll end it here. Garrett, I'll pitch to you here in just a second. Graham Bronstein, glad you're back. Jack McKenzie here. Also, Emery Winter. Don't forget tonight, 10:30, 365 Sports tonight on the CW and presented by Rooftop Innovations. Craig, great stuff. Tomorrow, we got a guy that's a blogger for Washington State. We'll check in with him. Grayson Grundhafer and a couple of others that will also bring your way. Hope you've enjoyed the show. Thank you so much for giving us the time you do every single day and our sponsors that allow us to happen. For Craig Smoak, I'm David Smoak. Have a great night. This is 365 Sports.
Ideal MRI is a small family business right here in Central Texas. We're open to support